The feathers wanted to use Han Sen to boost their reputation, but Han Sen ignored them. He stuck to practicing with his Geno arts and his knife skills. Because his core talents were so good, Han Sen's progress with Under the Sky was coming along quickly. When he practiced with Yun Suyi, however, he suppressed it. He continued to practice with her because she could be a witness for him. If anyone doubted his ability to learn and correct Under the Sky, she would be able to speak in support of him. He really did only learn it faster than others. Having been at Sky Palace for 3 months now, Han Sen's jade skin was finally going to ascend. A strange power flowed inside his bones and flesh. Leveling up to Earl meant generating a spirit. Jade skin's power had a light element. As the power increased, a jade light would cast a shadow across Han Sen at all times. It was very weird. The strangest part of the process was that beautiful light. It looked rather like a cold fairy, and her skin shone like jade. Han Sen successfully became an Earl with jade skin, and his fitness level increased. Other people could only level up to Earl and gain strength in the process once. Han Sen, however, had leveled up Earl 3 times. That meant his body was 3 times stronger. His strength was practically like a marquise. After Jade Skin successfully reached Earl status, he put all his power and focus into the practice of the Blood Pulse Sutra. He used the Jade Air to practice with the Blood Pulse Sutra, but its progress was only accelerated a little. It wasn't as compatible with the Jade Air as Jade Skin was. Yun Suyi was becoming an Earl. Yun Chongkong soon had her studying at home. With his extra free time, Han Sen returned to Xinyuan Cave to hunt down Xenogeneics. When Yun Suyi leveled up to Earl, she began practicing Phenomenon. It was a skill that was only 1 level beneath the textless book. It was a powerful skill. Yun Suyi gave up on using swords and furthered herself with knife skills and Under the Sky. Using swords no longer felt comfortable to her. It looks like I should find myself a decent knife. Yun Suyi was still not sure if she should totally abandon swords, as she had never owned a proper knife for herself. If she decided to proceed with knives, she'd have to procure a knife that was suitable for her. Suyi, why are you using knives? Yun Suseng asked, following her to the armory. I learned a new knife skill, so I thought I should give it a try. Yun Suyi started looking through the knives available in the armory. She seemed rather carefree about it. You can try knife skills, sure, but there is one thing you can't try. Yun Suseng looked very serious. What are you talking about, sis? Yun Suyi's heart panicked a little. Yun Suseng sighed and said, You know what I'm talking about. You know Han Sen isn't an option, so why do you remain so close to him? What are you thinking? He has a wife and kids. What can I do? I am just practicing with knives with him and nothing more, Yun Suyi explained. Good. Yun Suseng let the conversation end there. She didn't want to push the subject with Yun Suyi any further and risk making her mad. Yun Suseng smiled and said, If you're practicing knife skills, you'll want to attend a knife event on Cloud Island. What knife event? Do we have an event like that? Yun Suyi asked with surprise. Yun Suseng smiled and said, Yes, because of the feathers. They really want to use Han Sen to boost their reputation, but Han Sen continues to ignore them. They think too highly of themselves. If they really think they can fight Han Sen, Yun Suyi scoffed. Yun Suseng, seeing her confidence in Han Sen, felt worried. Even so, she knew she shouldn't say anything about it. After a moment of silence, Yun Suseng said, Angia wants to challenge Han Sen, and he's not a fool. You cannot underestimate him. The feathers became a low race, and they all dropped a level because of it. Angia was an Earl, and he was knocked down to a Viscount. Angia was very angry, so he went to the Pool of Rebirth. His body returned to 0, and now he has become an Earl again. Because of this, Angia is much stronger than the average Earl. Furthermore, he has practiced with the most difficult skill of the feathers, Heaven Feather. Not many people can learn it, like our textless book. It is not too powerful, but regardless, he is strong. This Angia does sound strong. The Pool of Rebirth is dangerous. If 10 people made use of it, there's no guarantee one of them would succeed. He is very lucky, Yun Suyi said. Yun Suseng nodded and said, He removed all of his skills with the pool, but his talent remained. Otherwise, he could not have learned Heaven Feather. The guy is complicated, but he is also ambitious. He makes for a difficult target. Even so, He's still weaker than Han Sen, Yun Sui said with a smile. Yun Su-hang did not say anything, and she just looked at her sister with something that resembled a smile. Yun Sui blushed and said, "Am I not correct? Han Sen was able to fight Lone Bamboo. That Angia is nothing. I don't even think he could beat me." "So, you'll be attending tomorrow's knife event?" Yun Su-hang smiled. "Yes. Why wouldn't I?" Yun Sui said. The armory had all sorts of weapons, but it was mostly filled with swords. Yun Sui selected a Marquise ice knife. There were also some Duke knives available, but despite being a higher class, they weren't as good as ice knife. After she returned, she used the ice knife to practice under the sky. It worked far better than it did with a practice knife. You really do need a real knife to practice knife skills. Yun Sui touched the blade of the ice knife gleefully. The next afternoon, Yun Su-hang took Yun Sui to participate in the knife event on Cloud Island. On their way, Yun Su-hang remembered the question she had wanted to ask. "By the way, which knife skill are you practicing?" "We are learning the Yun family's skill under the sky. Han Sen chose that skill as his prize, so I have been learning from him," Yun Sui said. Yun Su-hang did not say anything, but she thought to herself, "What can he do with under the sky? That skill is useless. It has a flaw." The feather students that lived on Cloud Island were busy preparing the knife event. "Angia, do you think Han Sen will come?" asked a feather lady called Ling Xin. Before Angia replied, a strong feather named Andrew said, "I think he is afraid of Angia. That is why he hasn't appeared. I bet you he won't come. Hearing what he did in Sky Palace, I thought he was strong. I didn't expect he'd be so much of a pussy that he wouldn't even show up. Ha! And people call him the Knife and Sword Master." Angia stared at Andrew and said, "Shut up. When are you going to stop being an idiot and watch your words? The Knife and Sword Master includes Lone Bamboo. What if the sky heard what you just said?" "Sorry," Andrew apologized. Angia shook his head. Andrew had always been like that, so changing him was difficult. After a brief moment of silence, Angia said, "It is fine if Han Sen does not come. People will just think he is afraid of us, and that still contributes to our cause." Ling Xin was worried, though. "We have been here for so long, and we have heard many stories about Han Senator. The people here respect him, and they say he is so strong." "So what? Angia will win." Andrew was very confident in Angia's abilities. Angia touched Ling Xin's head. "Don't worry. I have experienced rebirth, and I have practiced Heaven Feather and Judgment Knife. With all this, I will not be weak. And even if I do lose, with Han Sen's reputation, it would still count as a win just to fight with him. Just like him fighting Lone Bamboo. If he hadn't fought Lone Bamboo, he wouldn't have earned the reputation he currently possesses. We need a chance like this. If he comes and fights me, it will count as a win no matter what." After that, Angia smiled. "Go and prepare. The guests will soon arrive. Whether Han Sen comes or not, we need this to look good." Yun Su-hang and Yun Sui soon arrived at Cloud Island. There were a number of familiar faces there, like Thousand Feather Crane, Brother Crane. Yun Su-hang towed Yun Sui over to sit next to him. "Do you guys know where Han Sen is? Will he come to this knife event?" Thousand Feather Crane asked the two, but he was looking at Yun Sui. Yun Sui answered, "Han Sen went to Xinyuan Cave. He hasn't come back yet. He cannot participate in the knife event. It would be best if he didn't come." Thousand Feather Crane nodded. "Why?" Yun Sui did not understand. Thousand Feather Crane lowered his head and said, "With Han Sen's reputation, Angia is the only one who would benefit if they fought. It wouldn't matter if he won or lost. There is no need to help their kind." Yun Sui was not stupid. She understood what Thousand Feather Crane meant, and so she nodded. There were many Sky Palace students arriving. The highest of them were Earl class. The feathers hadn't been here for very long, so they were lucky to have that many people attend. Most people were there to see the blood feather knife. The blood feather knife was something that a feather alpha used a deified feather to forge. It was a treasure of the feathers, but even most of them never saw it. For outsiders, the chances were even less. For Angia to bring the blood feather knife here was surprising. Many elders wished to see it, so they sent their students to take a look on their behalf. Angia had prepared a speech for the beginning of the knife event. The feathers were very beautiful, and Angia was a good speaker. The atmosphere was pleasant. Angia did not waste time talking about pointless things, and he presented the blood feather knife quickly. Everyone focused on the rectangle box. Angia said quietly, "The blood feather knife has existed for thousands of centuries. We have yet to find a scabbard worthy of it, so we have kept it stored inside this box. I must apologize for this." After this, Angia gently opened the case. Yun Suyi and the others stared at the box. In it, there was a 3-foot-long white feather-shaped weapon. There was a blood marking on the white feather blade. It made a startling contrast with the white body. Angia explained, "This blade was created by our alpha using a deified feather. When it was created, a deified xenogeneic wanted it. Our alpha used the knife, which was not yet completed, to heavily damage the xenogeneic. That deified xenogeneic escaped, but the feather knife absorbed the xenogeneic's blood. That is why there is a mark. It led to the alpha naming it blood feather knife." Excitement moved through the audience. They wished to hold the blood feather knife to determine for themselves if the knife was real or fake. Angia knew people wanted to see it too. So, he took it out of the box and handed it to the nearest student, so they could pass it along. Thousand Feather Crane, Yun Susang, and Yun Suyi looked over the blood feather knife and came to the conclusion that it was a good knife. But there was a rumor that said the knife was a deified weapon, despite it not looking like one. People passed along the blood feather knife, all complimenting it. When it was handed back to Angia, an Earl class student asked, "If this is a deified weapon, why doesn't it reveal its power?" Angia smiled and said, "You have remarkable eyesight. Others will tell you it is a deified weapon, and with the material it was created with, it should be one. But the story I have just told you, about striking the deified xenogeneic, kept that from happening. The xenogeneic blood that splashed across it was not too compatible with the knife, so it came to be a king-class weapon instead. It is not a deified weapon, it is a king-class weapon. So that is why. People felt it was a great shame. King-class weapons were strong, but they weren't deified weapons. Today, I have asked you to come here in the hopes of finding a master for this knife. If anyone can beat me with knife skills, they may own it." After Angia said that, people became excited. Angia and his companions had come to Sky Palace because they had to. The rest of the feather race was depending on them to make friends with the sky. They wanted to quickly integrate with the population of Sky Palace so they could be considered natural members. When they came there, they brought a lot of treasures to hand out. Blood feather knife was one of them. But it wasn't as simple as handing out gifts to the first sky they met. They weren't entirely sure how the greedy elders of Sky Palace would react when they made their treasures available. And if the feathers' goods were simply taken from them, it would do little to grow their relationship with the sky. Angia only made the offer to the crowd because Han Sen hadn't come to the knife event. When he put the blood feather knife on display, he had no plan to receive it back. Of the sky students attending the knife event, one of them was the third elder's son. He was an earl called Wind 19. The third elder used knives, and so his son used knives too. The third elder was in charge of interacting with the feathers, so the feathers planned to give the blood feather knife to him. If they simply handed it to the third elder, though, it might not make much of an impression. He was an elder, and it was fair to say he had no lack of king-class weapons already. But if Wind 19 could win the knife in this knife event, it'd make everyone look good. When he received the knife as a prize, it would be far more memorable. Angia couldn't just give the knife to Wind 19. But if Wind 19 believed he used his own strength to win the knife, then the feathers wouldn't curry any favor. It had taken a little while for the feathers to devise a plan. Angia had to win a few rounds before losing to him. That way, Wind 19 would know that he was receiving a gift meant for him. "Angia, are you serious?" asked a strong man with a cow's head, his eyes wide. Angia smiled and said, "Of course. If any of you can beat me, then you can claim the blood feather knife for yourself. That includes you, Brother Cow." "Good. Then what are we waiting for? I am the best when it comes to knives. How about we compare our knife skills?" the cowhead man said, standing up. "Yes, please." Angia smiled and gestured towards the arena. The cowhead man was strong, and he was one of the outsider students. He was good with knives and fairly well known amongst the other students. He was also known for being quite grumpy. His name was Strong Cow. He was one of the students Angia hired to use knives against him. That way, before Angia fought Win 19, he could show off his own powers. Angia did not mind losing and giving out a gift, but he wanted to become very famous in the process. Everyone watched Angia and Strong Cow move to the arena, and they observed the match. Strong Cow was over 3 meters tall, and he was holding a giant horse knife. It was even taller than he was. It looked very scary. "I am going to begin," Strong Cow said simply, then slashed towards Angia. The giant horse knife was associated with the element of thunder. The knife light was like lighting. It became a cow-shaped bolt when it came for Angia. The Thunder Cow roared as it approached, and this was a fine display of Strong Cow's greatest skill. It was very strong, and the elites of the same level would not dare try to block such an attack. Everyone now looked at Angia, curious to see how he might react. Angia's white wings were still folded on his back. He was obviously not planning to evade. He was holding a common, Earl-class jade knife. It was made from Xian jade spirits, so it was nothing particularly special. As the Thunder Cow's knife light flashed towards Angia, the power looked as if it could break a mountain. Angia smiled. He moved his jade knife and slashed towards Strong Cow's Thunder Cow knife light. The jade knife was shining gold. It was like a light from heaven. Catcha! The Thunder Cow knife light was cut in half by Angia's golden light. The gold light did not stop, and it hit the horse knife and broke it in half. Strong Cow retreated. The gold light was a mere 3 inches in front of him when it disappeared. Everyone was shocked by the display. They could immediately tell that Angia had held back some of his power, too. If he had wanted to, the gold light would have cut right through the cow's face. Strong Cow was not a very talented elite, but he was still considered one of the strongest earls. Thunder Cow roar was powerful, but Angia had just beaten it without issue. Clearly, Angia was a top-rank earl. The Feather's Judgment Knife is special. It is a very strong Geno art, and it is said that it can cut through anything. I have never seen it before today, though. Thousand Feather Crane explained what they had just seen to Yun Susheng. "Brother Crane, do you think you can win?" Yun Susheng frowned. "I don't know, but I'm not good with knives, and that is what they are comparing. So, it is pointless for me to participate." Thousand Feather Crane shook his head. Strong Cow lost. The other students hesitated to try. Angia had fought a few bouts before today, but he had never proven himself to be that strong before. A student who was good at knife skills wanted to try. He didn't lose in such a dramatic fashion as Strong Cow, but everyone could tell he had been suppressed by Angia. No one was able to beat him over the next few rounds of battle. People started to look at Angia differently. Not many people in Sky Palace used knives or practiced knife skills. The few fighters Angia had just defeated weren't really the best earls. But even so, the fact that Angia kept winning was more than enough to prove his power. No one dared challenge him, and that included Win 19. Angia knew that Win 19 did not think he could win, so he didn't do anything about it. He simply went back to the stage and said, "Sky Palace has been home to a high race since ancient times. The genes and Geno arts here greatly surpass those of the feathers. I have come here in the hopes of learning, and now I have. I am so happy. I have heard Han Sen and Win 19 are the best earls when it comes to knife skills. That being said, it seems that Brother Han is either busy or is choosing to avoid me. That is very disappointing. Fortunately, Brother Wind is here. Do you think you could teach me?" Angia spoke quite politely, but everyone knew he was just taking digs at Han Senator. He was suggesting Han Sen was too scared to fight him. Angia didn't say it directly, but Yun Suyi thought this reflected poorly on Han Senator. She felt angry, hearing him speak that way. "Han Sen didn't come, but I have learned knife skills from him. I will fight on his behalf, and I will satisfy your desire by proxy." Yun Suyi, dressed in her white garb, marched straight down to the arena. Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Susheng were shocked, and they were too late to stop what was in motion. Angia was a top earl. Even they didn't think they could beat him. Yun Suyi had only just become an earl, so it was highly unlikely she'd win. Fortunately, this was Sky Palace. Even if she lost, her life wouldn't be in danger. Yun Susheng still felt sick, though. She knew Yun Suyi could not stand ill words being said about Han Sen, and that was why she was stepping forward. Angia watched the elegantly dressed lady walk towards him. He looked surprised. He smiled and said, Sister Yun must have only just become an earl. If I remember correctly, the Yun family specializes in swords. I would feel terrible if I defeated you. The Yun family's sword skills are strong, so it would not be all that impressive if I use sword skills to win. I have, however, learned a few knife skills from Han Senator. I wager that will be enough, Yun Sui said coldly. Then she drew ice knife. Angia frowned. He knew Yun Sui was Yun Changkong's daughter, and it would be bad for him to offend her. But the feathers had prepared the blood feather knife for the third elder, so he couldn't hand it over to Yun Sui instead. Yun Sui had just become an earl, too. If he lost to her, it would actually damage his own reputation. People would think he had deliberately thrown a match just to please a woman. It'd look terrible. Angia raced to think of a way out, but Yun Sui had already drawn her knife. He couldn't tell her he wasn't going to fight. So, after a moment of thought, Angia concocted a new scheme. If Sister Yun is this interested, then I will agree to the contest. Please. Angia pulled out a jade knife as he smiled to her. He planned to only block her attacks in order to make her feel her inferiority. If she refused to quit, he would concede. That way, people would simply think he was a gentleman who wouldn't fight a woman. Yun Sui bowed with her ice knife, and then she slashed. She used the knife skill under the sky. Yun Sui could not withstand Angia's mocking of Han Sen, but she knew that she hadn't mastered under the sky yet. After all, not many people would use under the sky to fight. All her experience with it had come from Han Sen himself. Han Sen told her she had finished learning it, though, and all she had to do was keep practicing with it. She had no idea how powerfully she might be able to use it in a real contest. And when Yun Sui attacked, Angia's face changed. His plan vanished in a puff of smoke as he saw a woman that looked like a ravenous wolf coming for him. He immediately became tense. It was just one slash, but Angia could feel wisps of a most dangerous presence rising from that skill. Angia was careful, and so he responded seriously. He started to cast Judgment Knife to retaliate, and he looked more serious now than he had when beating down Strong Cow. After Yun Sui slashed once, she was on the move. Before the knife air completed its attack, she slashed another 2 times. Angia lifted his knife and retreated. He used his knife skills to fight back. Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Sushang were frozen. They had seen Under the Sky before, as the Yun family had created and developed it. But they knew not many people made use of it, due to how fatal its flaws could be. If an opponent caught wind of the technique's flaw during a fight, it could lead to an opening and the subsequent death of the user. But Yun Sui's Under the Sky seemed very different to Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Sushang. They could not tell what had changed, but it was obvious that the biggest problems of the skill had vanished under Yun Sui's casting. How strong was Under the Sky? This question had an answer in Yun Sui. In the beginning, Yun Sui was nervous and her movements were unnatural. She soon noticed that, after using the skill, Angia was following her lead. It was just like how she practiced, and now she felt safe. Yun Sui remembered Han Sen told her that unless the opponent was much stronger than her, as long as she pulled off the first strike, none could beat her. The first strike was not random. It would home in on the opponent's weakness. That was how Under the Sky began. Once the opponent blocked the first strike, Under the Sky would keep on coming. It was like a target lock on the opposing fighter that would trap them in the skill. Unless the opponent's mind could see through destiny, they could not escape the trap that was Under the Sky. They would end up like a puppet, locked into following Under the Sky until they were completely trapped. Yun Sui usually fought Han Sen, and she knew Han Sen's knife mind was only one step away from being deified. The pressure Han Sen put upon Yun Sui was nothing like fighting Angia. She was used to Han Sen's strength, and dealing with Angia was easy, by comparison. The pressure was nowhere near on the same level. Thousand Feather Crane and the other students looked upon Yun Sui in shock as she kept swinging her ice knife. Her attacks seemed almost carefree, and in front of her was Angia, who now looked awfully grim. His forehead was dripping with sweat as he tried to escape her onslaught. Angia was like a puppet now. He couldn't cast any knife skills anymore. Every time he tried to, Yun Sui interrupted him halfway through with a perfectly placed attack. So, he would end up falling back again. Angia prepared to use a skill that would injure them both, but then, he noticed he couldn't even do that. Yun Sui was striking before he could cast a single thing. He began to feel like there was some invisible wire tangling him up, and it was getting tighter and tighter, so much so that he couldn't use his talents. He wanted to start coughing up blood. If Angia had been someone like Lone Bamboo, who could put his knife away before destiny, then he might have been able to escape under the sky. But he wasn't that strong. The entire arena was frozen. No one expected Yun Sui to be this strong. Even Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Sushang were frozen in disbelief. How is that possible? Her under the sky has no flaw. Thousand Feather Crane mumbled to himself. It was very shocking to see a fixed version of Under the Sky being used perfectly. This was something that was going to shock everyone from the elders to the leader himself.
Han Sen.
Yun Sushang said suddenly.
Han Sen.
What do you mean? Is this connected to Han Sen? Thousand Feather Crane looked at Yun Sushang with confusion. Did you forget? Han Sen was the first in the exam, and through it, he received Under the Sky. Yun Sushang looked strange as she spoke. How am I supposed to know what he selected? Only he made the decision, and I didn't ask him. Thousand Feather Crane looked at Yun Sushang. How do you know that he selected Under the Sky? Yun Sushang gave a wry smile and told him the situation between Han Sen and Yun Sui. When she finished the story, Thousand Feather Crane's eyes were wide. You mean, Han Sen chose Under the Sky because of Yun Sui? And he fixed Under the Sky's flaw in such a short amount of time? And on top of that, he taught her the corrected version of Under the Sky? Is such a thing even possible? I wouldn't believe it either. But you can see what she's doing, plain as day. There are no flaws in her execution. I can't think of another likelihood. Yun Sushang's expression looked disturbed. If this is true, then that means Han Sen has performed a great service for Sky Palace. He has fixed an ancient problem. This guy is a genius, no doubt. He will be an incredibly important person in the future. Thousand Feather Crane complimented him. It is hard to say that now. Yun Sui's opponent is just Angia, remember. When she faces a stronger opponent, we will have to see if there are still flaws in Han Sen's modifications. Yun Sushang retreated into thought for a moment, before going on to say, when this ends, we will take Yun Sui with us to report to Father. He should be able to find out the truth of this. As they had their discussion, Angia was in the midst of a difficult situation. Angia was far stronger than Yun Sui. If Yun Sui's power was equivalent to an average human, then Angia was a big and scary shark. His power could kill Yun Sui with ease. But currently, Angia was a shark that had been caught on a hook. Yun Sui would add some slack to the cord whenever he struggled, so he couldn't use strength to get away. However, whenever he relaxed a little, the wire would tighten. Angia could not exercise any of his strengths. The hook continued to sink deeper into him, and he was getting tangled up even further by Under the Sky. I have lost. Sister Yun is very strong. This must be the Yun family's technique that is called Under the Sky. It is fairly amazing. It is one of the best knife skills in the world, for sure. Angia was smart. He knew he was going to lose, so if he kept fighting for the sake of it, it'd only be a matter of time before things took an ugly turn for him. As a result, he chose to concede and save face. But he carefully pointed out where Under the Sky came from, and he only admitted that he lost to Under the Sky. He did not make a single mention of the fact that it was a skill she had learned from Han Sen. Many of the students had never before seen Under the Sky in action. They only noticed that's what it was now, after Angia spoke. Yun Sui returned her ice knife to its scabbard and said darkly, Under the Sky has always had a big flaw that rendered it unusable in combat. The Under the Sky I used was a variant that was modified by Han Senator. It corrects the problems of the original. I have not learned it well, and if I was to estimate, I am at around 10% of Han Sen's proficiency with it. After hearing that, all the students of Sky Palace were in shock. So many people had wished to modify Under the Sky, but no one had been able to solve the issues plaguing it. It was difficult to believe Han Sen had sorted it out. Angia's face, in the meantime, was turning green and white. Even a smart guy like him couldn't think of anything else to. Can I take the blood feather knife now? Yun Sui said, looking right at Angia. She was angry that Angia had mocked Han Sen, so she wasn't going to be polite. Of course. Sister Yun's knife skill is strong, and so the knife is yours. Angia forced a smile and passed the box to Yoon Soo-yi. Thanks. Yoon Soo-yi put away the blood feather knife and left the arena. Yoon Soo-sang and Thousand Feather Crane got up to meet her, and Yoon Soo-sang asked, Soo-yi, is what you said true? Under the Sky's flaws have been fixed? Of course it is true. Yoon Soo-yi nodded. Let's go. We are going to have to see our father. Yoon Soo-sang pulled Yoon Soo-yi away, and they left Cloud Island. The news that Under the Sky had been fixed was far too important. She couldn't wait around for the event to end before going back. And furthermore, Yoon Soo-yi had received the blood feather knife, so the event would soon be over anyway. The other students started to leave, too. They also wished to know if Under the Sky had truly been fixed. If that was true, then Sky Palace had another exclusive knife skill. Angia and the other feathers all looked depressed. No one wished to say a word. They wanted to use Han Sen to get famous, but instead, Angia had been beaten by Han Sen's student. They were all so upset. It was far worse than losing to Han Sen directly. They wouldn't gain any fame from this, and they couldn't give the knife to the third elder as planned. And the biggest problem was that Yoon Soo-yi had taken the knife without being the slightest bit impressed. This failure had certainly led to a loss of reputation. Despite being unable to beat Yoon Soo-yi, who had learned directly from Han Sen, Angia had provoked Han Sen multiple times. It'd sound fairly ridiculous. He had completely lost, and it filled the feathers with frustration. There was nothing they could to discharge their anger, either. All they could do was swallow it. I can't believe Han Sen concocted a plan like that. I underestimated him. It looks like that man is not just a fighter, Angia said through gritted teeth. He thought Han Sen had planned to use Yoon Soo-yi to fight him all along, but he was thinking too much, of course. Han Sen had never spared a thought about how he might deal with Angia. It was still not over yet, though. Yoon Soo-sang brought Yoon Soo-yi to meet with Yoon Changkong. They told him about Han Sen and Under the Sky. Really? Soo-yi, show me Han Sen's modified version. Yoon Changkong did not believe Han Sen had what it took to fix the skill. He believed there had to be some sort of problem remaining. After all, so many elites had tried and failed to fix it. Han Sen couldn't just fix it within a month, even if he was a genius. But when Yoon Changkong witnessed Yoon Soo-yi's performance, his mouth dropped wide open. Yoon Changkong was the leader of the Yoon family and the 10th elder of Sky Palace. He was no stranger to Under the Sky. Yoon Soo-yi showed him her Under the Sky, and he immediately recognized that it was different from the original version. But the difference fixed the inherent problem it had once possessed. There were no more flaws. It had become a skill that was perfectly usable in battle. Soo-yi, did you really learn this from Han Sen? Yoon Changkong hastily asked Yoon Soo-yi after she finished her performance. Yes. He's been teaching me since I leveled up to become an earl. Yoon Soo-yi nodded. Father, does the modified Under the Sky really work? Yoon Soo-sang asked. Yes, it looks like it really can. There's one thing I don't understand, however. How can your knife skill express the feelings of the textless book? Yoon Changkong asked. Yoon Soo-yi quickly explained how Han Sen used his knife mind in a way that allowed her to get a feel for it. Yoon Changkong heard this and gave a wry smile. This Han Sen is a genius. He has modified the knife skill itself and used feelings as its guidance. He did fix Under the Sky's problem, and he has made it usable in proper combat. He learned Under the Sky as a beginner. Then he expanded his understanding in order to abandon the strict rules of the text and start infusing it with his own emotions. He made something complicated far simpler. Yoon Changkong thought for a minute, then continued. An elder once thought about doing this, but there were too many problems for it to be effective. But it seems that is what Han Sen has done, and somehow, he has finished it. This required a keen observation and a profound understanding of the skill's core. That which he has done with his knife is something only a grandmaster could do. Assuming, of course, that he is the one who has done all this. Yoon Changkong stopped talking. He took Yoon Soo-yi with him to meet with the leader of Sky Palace. The news of Under the Sky being fixed spread like wildfire, and the position of Under the Sky changed. It became a Geno art of the palace, good and proper. It had a big impact on things, too. Han Sen's name was heard far and wide again, with Angia being someplace on the sidelines. Whenever he was mentioned, it would be just as the small character who it was showcased upon. Han Sen did not know about this, though. He kept practicing and doing his thing in Xinyuan Cave until the White Jade Building was ready to open. Han Sen went back to his Jade Island first, though, and before he went on to White Jade Building, Thousand Feather Crane came to see him. "Brother Han, the leader has requested an audience with you. Let's pack you up, so we can go."
Tusen Feather Crane smiled to Han Sen.
"The leader wants me for something?" Han Sen was surprised as he looked on Thousand Feather Crane. The leader was a very busy man, so he wouldn't summon Han Sen for nothing. "You don't know? The Under the Sky modifications of yours, they were verified and accepted by the leader. It has been accepted into the library of Sky Palace's legendary techniques. As the modifier, you are to be given a reward. That's why the leader has summoned you." Thousand Feather Crane smiled. Han Sen, hearing this, was surprised. He hadn't realized so many things would happen while he was gone. He followed Thousand Feather Crane to Sky Palace. When he walked the road to the sky, he didn't feel anything unusual. Only your first time ascending would give you that sense of suppression. Inside Sky Palace, many students looked at Han Sen strangely. Their eyes were filled with admiration. This was the first time Han Sen would get to see the Sky Palace leader. Han Sen had met him once, but he hadn't been fully conscious at the time. He wasn't sure what the leader really looked like. It turned out that the Sky Palace leader seemed fairly ordinary. He looked like a common, middle-aged man. He did not look intimidating, and he did not look holy. He just looked like a normal guy. Han Sen walked up to him and bowed. The leader of Sky Palace looked at him with interest and smiled. "Stand up. You look better than the last time I saw you." "Yeah, that was terrible. Sorry about being so useless." Han Sen felt embarrassed. It was terrible that Thousand Feather Crane had to carry him in. The leader of Sky Palace squinted his eyes at Han Sr. "You are not useless. You finished modifying Under the Sky with success. That is something many people have longed to fix. If you were useless, then what are my elders?" "I didn't mean it that way." Han Sen lowered his head. The leader of Sky Palace laughed and said, "Don't be so polite. Your master, Isha, wasn't like you. She never really was polite, but I liked her how she was." Han Sen had no idea Isha was held with such high regard in Sky Palace. It looked like the leader of Sky Palace still missed her somewhat. Did this old man fall in love with his student? Is that why he misses her so much? Han Sen wondered. The leader's face turned stony. He flicked his finger, and suddenly, Han Sen felt incredibly heavy. He almost collapsed on the floor. You little brat. You look respectable enough, but you were thinking something sordid in your mind." The leader of Sky Palace looked at Han Sen and grunted. Han Sen was suddenly covered in cold sweat. The leader could see through Han Sen's mind. That was a scary power for someone to have. "I apologize," Han Sen said, as quickly and sincerely as he could. The leader of Sky Palace laughed and said, "Isha always yelled at me, but she did so directly. Unlike you, who keeps your real opinions in the privacy of your mind. This guy is a creep. He loves to be yelled at, so he must be a masochist." Han Sen couldn't help but think. As soon as the thought crossed his mind, he knew he had done something bad. The leader of Sky Palace smiled at Han Sen, and even more pressure dropped onto him. It was a struggle not to fall to his knees. "I really know I did wrong this time," Han Sen shouted, his face looking bitter. The leader of Sky Palace smiled and said, "It's okay. You are Isha's student, and you have been a great help to Sky Palace. Under the Sky's modifications are good. Tell me what you would like." "It was my pleasure to help you. I wouldn't dare be bold enough to ask for a reward," Han Sen said quickly. "It is fine. You are not that humble, so there is no use pretending that you are." The Sky Palace leader grinned. "How about this? Isha used to feed horses, and you can feed horses, too. That will be your reward for the modifications." "Thanks." Han Sen forced his mind not to think of anything else. "Okay, you can go." The leader of Sky Palace waved his hand, indicating Han Sen could leave. Cough cough. "Mr. Leader, you are so powerful. With a flick of your fingers, you can inhibit all my movements. That is impressive." Han Sen's feet did not move. It felt as if his body was carrying a mountain. He could barely stand. Sky Palace leader squinted his eyes, looked at Han Sen, and said, "This is my reward for you. If you do not leave, I will reward you more. Han Sen turned around and departed, swearing to God he would never come and see that man again. F***CK. What is this reward? I did a great service to these people. It'd be fine if they didn't want to reward me, but making me feed horses? I don't want to feed your F***king horses. After Han Sen left Sky Palace, he repeatedly swore in his heart. Walking out of Sky Palace made Han Sen all sweaty. He did not know what Geno art was being used on him, but it felt like he was bearing a great weight on his back. He could withstand it, but he was not able to run. All he could do was walk. What is it? What did the leader give you? Thousand Feather Crane asked, coming forward eagerly. Let's not talk about it. When my master was in Sky Palace, did she offend the leader in some way? Han Sen thought that it must be Isha's fault that he was being treated so poorly. Why do you ask that? The leader loved her the most. He took her as a student, so everyone knows that, Thousand Feather Crane said. That is strange. If my master was that loved, then why did he not reward me? He used a weird Geno art to suppress my body, and he's now making me feed his horses. Han Sen frowned, and then went on to say, is he really mad that he could not take me on as a student, perhaps? What happened? Thousand Feather Crane asked. Han Sen told him his story. Thousand Feather Crane heard it all, and when the story was finished, his mouth had fallen wide open. He looked at Han Sen as if he had just seen a ghost. Don't you think that this is a little much? Han Sen also thought to himself, I only complained in my mind, so why is he going this far? Thousand Feather Crane gave Han Sen a strange look. You are lucky. The Geno art you were put under is Sky Heart Lock. It is a part of the textless book. King classes can barely make use of it, and they often end up damaged. If they did not have the right blood, they wouldn't even try to use it. It is difficult to find someone that knows about textless book and sacrifices. The leader has used it twice on you, and not even Lone Bamboo was subjected to that. Han Sen felt his eyebrows rise. Really? Of course. Sky Heart Lock is no secret here. It locks down your body, and you have to use your own power to break free. Do it, and your fitness and air can increase. You know how important the basics are. You can do this to become stronger, and it won't affect your leveling up progress. Many people would actually enjoy that. You've received it twice, and here you are complaining. It makes me want to hit you. Thousand Feather Crane looked jealous. Han Sen looked at him strangely and said, What about feeding the horses? That can't be good. If I am correct, the horse you'll be feeding is the Dream Beast. I cannot tell you if that is good or bad, though, Thousand Feather Crane said, after a moment of thought. While they were talking, a butler-like man approached. He bowed to Han Sen and said, Brother Han, the leader has requested that I take you to Dream Island. You will have to work for Dream Beast for 3 months. Can you go now, or must you pack? Brother, can I go tomorrow? Han Sen asked. Sure, I'll pick you up tomorrow. The man smiled. Thanks a lot. Han Sen turned back to Thousand Feather Crane and said, Old Crane, find me a way to get back to Jade Island. With my weight, the legless crane cannot carry me. Thousand Feather Crane laughed and said, Don't worry, the lock is only clamping down on your body. It hasn't increased your weight. Your mount won't suffer because of it. Han Sen had no choice but to believe him. He climbed atop the crane with his heavy body. The crane felt nothing, and it took off into flight as it usually did. The bird had eaten many pieces of high-class xenogeneic meat. It was really strong, and it was flying a little faster than it had in the beginning. Its speed had only increased a little, though. Its wings were still injured, and so it couldn't fly entirely straight. It couldn't go too fast. When Han Sen was back at Little Jade Island, he used all kinds of powers to try to remove the lock that had been placed upon him. Aside from using Super God Spirit Mode, he tried everything at his disposal and failed to unlock it. Han Sen had no choice now but to pack. The next day, the butler took him to Dream Island. Han Sen did not know much about Dream Beast. He knew it was a deified xenogeneic, though, and Lone Bamboo had endured the nightmares given to him by this creature. Is that old man going to make the Dream Beast give me 10,000 nightmares? I don't want to experience those things. My life is a happy story. There is no need for tragedy, Han Sen thought with fright. It took Lone Bamboo 10 years to wake up. Even if Han Sen was stronger, it'd still take a few years. And by then, Linger wouldn't even know who her father was. That would be sad.
No, no.
I cannot have a nightmare. I need to talk to that old man again. Han Sen turned around, wanting to leave. But then, all of a sudden, a gravelly, monstrous voice said from behind him, "Who said you could leave?"
Han Senes body frose stiff.
He slowly turned back around, and at the center of a mirror-like lake, a white unicorn-like creature was emerging. It might have been the greatest xenogeneic Han Sen had ever seen, but when he looked into its eyes, Han Sen felt chills roll through him. Looking at the creature did not make him feel good. The dreamy blue eyes, however, were smiling. Even so, they gave him goosebumps. Ahaha, Mr. Dream. The leader sent me here to check on whether or not you need anything. If there is something you require, I will report it to the leader and bring it here, Han Sen said quickly. He thought he should get out now. I see. There is something I need. Come here. The dream beast stepped onto the grass, smiling at Han Sen. Mr. Dream, what do you require? Han Sen didn't think that the creature's smile was very nice. Dream Beast did not say anything, but his eyes flashed. Han Sen felt a power come upon him, and his heavy body started to fly. Splash! Han Sen flew over the lake and dropped into it. Normally, falling into a lake was no big deal. But now, his body was so heavy that he could not get away from the water. He couldn't even float. Dream Beast approached Han Sen's struggling form and laughed. Stop pretending. I know you can survive in the water. There is a type of gemstone beneath the sand. It is my food. You can go down there and get me some. I require 10 of them a day. If you don't fill the quota, I will give you a nightmare. And by the way, I am fond of cleanliness. Some would say too much. So, do not make the water dirty. If you do that, I will give you 100 nightmares, Dream Beast said. Han Sen, upon hearing all that, stopped pretending to struggle. He immediately dove down into the water. He could breathe underwater, but he just wanted to earn some sympathy points first. Unfortunately, the act didn't work on Dream Beast. The dream lake was clean, and you could see down to the bottom. Han Sen guessed it must have been 10 meters deep. Strangely, though, Han Sen did not see any other creatures in the water. There weren't even any plants like seaweed. The whole lake was clean like a well-polished gemstone. There was not a single speck of dust, which was quite scary. Han Sen's body reached the bottom, and his feet touched the sand. The sand followed the waves, rising like mist. This is your first day, so I'm only giving you a warning. If you kick up any sand again, straight into the dreamscape you go. Dream Beast's voice boomed into Han Sen's ears. If you don't let me stand on the sand, how am I supposed to find your gemstones? Han Sen asked quickly. That is your problem, not mine. I am merely following the rules, Dream Beast said as if it was ordinary. Han Sen knew there was no point resisting, so he pulled his legs off the bottom of the lake. He remained afloat, afraid of moving the sand with his body. But the sand was very light. The slightest wave would make the sand rise like mist, and the water would become dirty-looking. Han Sen tried his best to keep any more body parts from touching the sand, and that was how he avoided making the sand rise again. Normally, it would not have been difficult to maintain this position, but Han Sen still had Sky Heart Lock clamping down on him. Beneath that pressure, holding his position was difficult. It brought his body pain. Han Sen was using all kinds of strength to support his body. Otherwise, he'd have already been down against the bottom of the lake. But keeping that position was a challenge. Han Sen looked around the lake, and the sand was very flat. There was no mark or disturbance, and neither were there any convenient rocks. Han Sen looked around for a while, but there did not seem to be any gemstones. According to what Dream Beast said, the gemstones were supposed to reside beneath the sand. So, he'd have to collect the gemstones out of the sand. But Han Sen did not know where exactly beneath the sand a gemstone might lie. He used his Dongxian aura to scan the lake bed, but there was nothing to be seen. At least today I can break the rules. Han Sen used his strength to dig through the sand, and after digging for a while, he found a clean, orb-sized gemstone that looked like a diamond. Mr. Dream, is this what you're looking for? Han Sen asked, holding up the gemstone. Yes. I eat 10 a day. If you miss one, you'll have nightmares forever. Plus, you deliberately destroyed the bed of sand. I will punish you now by making you work for me for another month." Dream Beast's voice came out of nowhere. Han Sen felt depressed, but it was his own fault for not abiding by the rules in someone else's abode. The sand did indeed harbor gemstones, but they were a rare find. Detecting the gemstones without touching the sand was very hard. But that couldn't stop Han. Senator Han Sen had learned a gentle skill from Moon Wheel King and the narrow moon knife. He could cast power into water without causing a ripple. It would not be too difficult to keep the sand still. Then, Han Sen cast his gentle moon skill and looked through the sand carefully, searching for a gemstone. His body was suppressed by Sky Heartlock. He had to keep his head down and his feet up, and he had to use the gentlest power he could to retrieve the gemstones. He was in the lake for a whole 10 hours straight, fetching the gemstones. When he came back out of the lake, he did not want to move. "You are better than I thought. It looks like if I want to eat more, it should be fine." Dream Beast was resting beneath a tree. He smiled at Han Sen casually. Han Sen did not even have the strength to complain. He just lay in the grass near the lake, his body too sore to move. He felt so soft, as if his body was devoid of bones. The sad life of Han Sen started on that day. Every day, he spent most of his time under the surface of the lake in pursuit of gemstones. Whenever he had time remaining to himself, he rested. He did not have time to practice. Han Sen did not know why the leader wanted him to be here, but it was related to Isha. Therefore, it shouldn't have been too harmful. And the leader had used his own energy to give Han Sen 2 Sky Heartlocks. If he wanted to harm Han Sen, he wouldn't have had to make such an effort. Han Sen worked hard in the lake. Dream Beast still never grew to like him, though. If he got up late, Dream Beast would go and kick him into the water. And the sick Dream Beast would always say how great fresh gemstones were. Han Sen couldn't get any more than 10 to save for the next day. "When I become deified and stronger than you, I will make you search for the gemstones. I will tie your legs up and make you scour the sand with your own tongue." Han Sen thought angrily to himself. "Good thinking. From today on, you will use your own tongue to search for the gemstones. But if your tongue touches a gemstone, I will cut it off," Dream Beast's toneless voice said right beside Han Sen. Han Sen was struck with another chill. He felt hopeless, and he thought, "Sage *T. He can read minds?" Han Sen was going crazy, having to dig through the sand with his tongue for the job. Han Sen could withstand a lot, but Dream Beast's ability to read his mind was particularly annoying. Han Sen thought of many different ways in which he might be able to protect his thoughts from the mind-reading ability, but nothing seemed to work. Han Sen gave those methods a few tries each, risking punishment. Before long, though, he noticed that the whole mind-reading thing wasn't based on hearing his precise thoughts. The creature would get an idea of what Han Sen was thinking about, then guess the rest. That made Han Sen feel a bit better. If Dream Beast could read the details of everything in Han Sen's brain, many secrets would be revealed. Because of all this testing, however, Han Sen was punished many times. The length of time he was supposed to work with Dream Beast was extended from 3 months to 13 months. After half a month of hard work, Han Sen was given the opportunity to meet someone. When he saw Yun Suyi, Han Sen felt as if he had been in jail for decades. With someone coming to visit him, he almost cried.
Han Sen.
"What happened to you?" Yun Suyi looked at Han Sen in confusion. "I am fine. Sand has gotten into my eyes, that's all." Han Sen acted like a man, trying to play things cool. At times, Han Sen would go to ridiculous lengths to save face. "Right, well, why have you come to see me?" Han Sen asked Yun Suyi after he gained control of himself. Yun Suyi unstrapped a box she had attached to her waist. She opened it and passed it to Han Sr. "I used the knife skills you taught me to win this king-class weapon called Blood Feather Knife. I got it for beating Angia. Half of it is yours, so I have brought it here for you to take a look at. You won the knife. It's yours. Besides, I have Ghost Teeth Knife. I don't require any more," Han Sen said, but he still took a look at the blade. "Anyway, you are right. You own half of the knife, but I use it," Yun Suyi said with a chuckle. "This is quite good." Han Sen stroked the body of Blood Feather Knife, and then went on to say, "It is a good knife. It doesn't seem as strong as my ghost teeth knife, but the abilities aren't compatible with my teeth knife stuff anyway. It seems to be very good for something like Under the Sky. Han Sen stroked the blade, and then something burned the tips of his fingers. He jumped, then looked at the blade more closely. His fingers had been burned by the blood mark on the blade. The blood-red stain was fairly obvious against the white of the blade. Yun Sui explained, blood feather knife was made from a deified feather of a feather alpha. Before it was complete, however, a deified xenogeneic came to take it. The xenogeneic was injured, and the blood feather knife was stained with its blood. The blood couldn't be rinsed off the blade, and because of this, the knife was unable to be deified. It had to settle for being king class. The feather alpha couldn't wipe the blood off. Han Sen reached out his finger and touched the blood markings. If it could be wiped off, it wouldn't be there. And I doubt the knife would ever have been offered as a gift, Yun Sui said.
Han Sen nodded.
His finger touched the blood mark, and there was that burning feeling again. The crystallized blood in his body started to melt in response to the heat. Han Sen pressed his finger to the mark more firmly and cast the blood pulse sutra. He felt a trace of blood-tinged air follow his finger and enter his body. The blood in Han Sen's finger touched the bloody air. It was like fire meeting gasoline. It was going to burn with a flash. Han Sen was shocked and happy. All it took was a tiny bit of blood air to make his blood boil. If Han Sen could absorb all the blood on the blade, his blood pulse sutra might be able to reach Earl status. What is it? Yun Sui saw Han Sen freeze on the spot, and she got a little worried.
Han Sen.
What's going on? Han Sen hesitated, unsure of what he would need to tell her. Women were very caring. Seeing Han Sen's face, Yun Sui gently said, "If you need anything, you can tell me. I will help you, if I am able to." Han Sen hesitated, and he said, "Sui, can I play with this knife for a bit? I thought it was something big. You own this knife too, so just take it," Yun Sui told him firmly. Han Sen was so happy. He took out his ghost teeth knife and passed it over to Yun Sui. "I am taking your blood feather knife for a bit, so in the meantime, use this ghost teeth knife." Yun Sui blushed. She seemed to fall into deep thought, but she still accepted the knife. She held it uncomfortably and said, "Okay, I will use this for now." Han Sen hadn't had anyone to talk to on the island, and he wanted to continue speaking with Yun Sui, but Dream Beast reminded him of his need to collect 10 gemstones. If he didn't, he'd suffer nightmares forever. Han Sen had to send Yun Sui away so that he could return to the water and collect gemstones with his tongue. Han Sen didn't learn much, but he did craft a skill called Sword Tongue. It wasn't powerful, and it was actually really gentle. If it wasn't, he wouldn't have been able to use his tongue to dig through the sand. Finding 10 gemstones was hard that day, and after he handed them over, he was tired. Still, he did not let himself rest. Han Sen took out the blood feather knife from the box he was given. Then, he placed it on his knees. He touched the mark and cast the blood pulse sutra. He felt a blood air rise from the blade, but it was very slow. Han Sen cast it for a while, and he only took the blood air that was on the surface. Han Sen thought for a bit, then dripped a drop of his crystal blood onto the mark on the blade. The crystal blood melted into the mark and merged with it. You couldn't see the blood anymore. Han Sen cast the blood pulse sutra. He felt the blood air burst out of the mark. It went into his body, and when it did, his crystal blood boiled. Han Sen felt as if his body was going to be evaporated like steam. It took 7 hours for a portion of the blood air to be refined. This is scary, for just a little blood air to be so strong. Perhaps a few of these will take my blood pulse sutra up to Earl status. Han Sen was delighted. After that, before Han Sen went back to work, he used a drop of his crystal blood on the blood mark again. After he worked, he'd come and collect that blood. The blood had the energy of the xenogeneic, and Han Sen could refine it for hours. Habits could be very scary things. Han Sen had been on Dream Island for 3 months now, and he had grown used to having 2 sky heart locks on his body. Aside from moving slower, he was living like a normal person. His efficiency in digging up the gemstones was higher now, too. He could find 10 of them in 2 or 3 hours. What made Han Sen the happiest, however, was that his blood pulse sutra reached Earl status. The blood feather knife's mark was much lighter, too. Han Sen planned to keep on absorbing the blood that plagued it. The blood was damaging the blood feather knife, so if Han Sen could absorb all of it, perhaps there was a chance to make the blade deified again. He was positive that Yun Suyi wouldn't mind that. Dream Beast did not enjoy seeing Han Sen relaxing, so he had started to demand more gemstones. He made sure that Han Sen worked 10 hours underwater every day. Because that was too boring, Han Sen practiced his tongue skills. It wasn't an amazing power, but his tongue could generate a sword air that would kill someone with no problem. But as of yet, Han Sen hadn't broken a single sky heart lock. Perhaps he hadn't approached it correctly, or there was some other problem. He wasn't sure. Han Sen asked Thousand Feather Crane whenever he came to visit, but sky heart locks were very rare. Thousand Feather Crane hadn't experienced one himself, so he didn't know too much about it. Thousand Feather Crane did pledge to seek out information regarding it, though, so he could help Han Sen figure out what to do. There was a student of the sky that once suffered the sky heart lock, and it took him 3 years to remove it, and that person only had one to endure. But Han Sen had 2 locks to deal with. Thousand Feather Crane couldn't be sure when he could unlock them. As more and more time passed, Han Sen grew used to the sky heart locks. They didn't affect him as much, but he still couldn't break them. After half a year passed, Han Sen started to miss his family. He missed Ji Yanran, Linger, and even Little Flower, who had been taken by Old Cat. How is Han Sen doing? In Sky Palace, the leader asked the elegant Dream Beast. Not bad. The sky heart lock doesn't seem to affect him as much, Dream Beast answered. Not bad, huh? From you, that's a mighty compliment. The Sky Palace leader laughed. Dream Beast smiled but did not answer. He did go on to say, Are you sure you want Han Sen to go to the ancient gods' energenic space? Not Lone Bamboo. The leader of Sky Palace quietly said, You know of Lone Bamboo's situation? He is already a marquis. It would be meaningless for him to go, and it would be too dangerous for the average student. Any cent would not be coming back. After a while, the leader went on to say, I promised Isha I would make Han Sen a marquis. If Lone Bamboo does not need to go there, then he is the next best candidate. Dream Beast nodded and said, He is almost done. He cannot get any better in Dream Island, so I suppose I can let him G? It was supposed to be a 1-year term, and only half of that is passed. You cannot waste the rest of the year, can you? The Sky Palace leader smiled. You know he received the blood feather knife, yes? Dream Beast asked. Sky Palace leader nodded. He looked at Dream Beast, wondering why he was mentioning it. He is absorbing the xenogenic blood on the knife. It is working. In perhaps a few months, the xenogenic blood will be completely absorbed, Dream Beast said. Really? The leader of Sky Palace looked very surprised. The feathers tried many methods to remove the blood, but none worked. Now, Han Sen is absorbing it? If they learn this was actually possible, they will be very angry. Dream Beast laughed as he spoke. If he can really absorb the xenogenic blood, the blood feather knife might possibly become a deified weapon again. But it will also need to be refined once more. We will have to set this up, so we can get another deified weapon for Sky Palace. That is all I can do. The leader of Sky Palace laughed. When will that guy come back? Dream Beast asked suddenly. He hasn't come back from the Barrens yet. The leader of Sky Palace looked troubled. In a hard voice, Dream Beast said, There cannot be an empty elder throne for too long. If he is truly not coming back, we need to make plans. It would be bad if the elders keep fighting. The leader of Sky Palace thought for a moment. There is no need to rush this. That guy wouldn't be killed with any ease. Perhaps there was some kind of incident, but he will be back. I hope so, Dream Beast said, then walked out of the Sky Palace. There is still half a year to go. If you have the time, teach him something so he has a higher chance of surviving in ancient god space, the leader of Sky Palace said to Dream Beast's back. He is not a student of Sky Palace. Why would I do such a thing? After Dream Beast said that, he disappeared. Han Sen finished digging up gemstones for the day. He washed the gemstones and placed them on the leaves next to Dream Beast. When he was going back to absorb the xenogenic blood on the blade, Dream Beast suddenly said, From now on, there is no need for you to dig up gemstones. Han Sen was so happy to hear this, and he said, You are letting me go? Letting you go? That would be impossible. Dream Beast smiled and looked at Han Senator. His eyes looked very dreamy. Han Sen started to say something, but his eyes froze and went out of focus. The scene before Han Sen had changed. He was suddenly inside an abandoned city. He realized what was going on, and he yelled, "Dream! You said that if I completed my tasks, I wouldn't be put into a dream. I only promised I wouldn't put you inside a tragedy dream." Dream Beast's voice resonated in the air. "What is this dream, then?" Han Sen asked with a frown. "It is a nightmare." "Enjoy," Dream Beast said, and his voice vanished. Han Sen wanted to ask something, but he suddenly heard a beast roar from someplace amidst the ruins around him. Many xenogeneics began to climb out of the rubble, and they ran towards Han Sen as soon as they saw him. Han Sen was standing on a ruin that looked like a landfill. There were all sorts of xenogeneics, in different shapes, coming for him. Even the sky was filled with them. ***. It is just a dream. I will wake up when I die, Han Sen thought to himself. If you died in this dream, your body would be fine, but your will would perish. For example, you might go into a vegetative state. Dream Beast's voice was cold in the air again. Inside a storage shed in a kindergarten, Lu Zime was in a strange position. She was sweating and her skin was red. "I can do it!" Lu Zime was lying on the floor, gasping. She felt like her bones were going to fall apart. Her muscles were sore. If she moved, she'd feel like she was getting stung by needles. After she signed that unfair contract, her sad life began. She had to do whatever Bauer told her to do. Bauer told her that this was a strong geno art. Bauer watched her practice, but she felt as if it was more like torture. It was a very painful process. It is okay if you do not wish to learn it, and the debt you have. Bauer was sitting atop a plank of wood. In her fat hand, she clasped many contractual papers. Lu Zime saw all those papers, and then she gritted her teeth and continued the horrible geno art that Bauer was supposedly teaching her. After all this time, she had incurred more and more debt. The debt she had now was something she could not pay back in multiple lifetimes. Lu Zime hated herself for not being able to resist the temptations presented by Bauer. She had been drawn in by beautiful clothes and cosmetics, so she had signed a number of different contracts. That was unfair. And of course, since she could not pay it all back, she thought that she might as well sign up for greater debts. "Let's stop here. We can continue this tomorrow." Bauer looked at the time and then jumped off of the wood plank. She walked out of the storage shed.
Des astérisques Emenkid.
Lu Zime lay down on the ground like a rug, unable to move. Han Sen was as sad as Lu Zime. He kept fighting against different types of xenogeneics in the dream he was placed in. He couldn't stop, for the xenogeneics kept coming. There was nowhere to hide, either. All he could do was kill. Because he was inside a dream, he could only get tired mentally. His body was fine, so he could keep fighting without rest. Dream Beast did not want him to rest. The worst thing, however, was that Sky Heart Lock worked in the dream. It made him depressed. Han Sen did not know how long he had been fighting. He had pretty grown numb to it all now. There were many xenogeneics in the dream, and they stretched out before Han Sen in endless lines. There were the likes of the Shinjade spirits, but many others that Han Sen had never seen before, too. All those xenogeneics wielded different powers, as well. They felt so real to Han Senator, everything was so lucid that it was difficult to determine whether it was truly a dream or not. Han Sen had to use everything he could to fight, and he had come close to death on numerous occasions. Dream Beast watched Han Sen with a strange expression. He told Han Sen that he would become a vegetable if he died in the dream, and that wasn't a lie. He could make Han Sen die a mental death if he wanted to. But Dream Beast did not plan on killing him. He did it so Han Sen would fight nonstop and give it his all. He wanted to see how long he'd last. But Han Sen's performance was beyond his wildest expectations. Han Sen only had to survive for a month, and he had already surpassed that requirement. Han Sen had been in the dream, killing, for 4 months. He had yet to perish. It was not strange that Han Sen could kill the xenogeneics because the creatures in the dream were set to Han Sen's level. Even the higher-tier ones had the same power as Han Sen. He did this to train Han Sen, so Han Sen could learn more about xenogeneics. Through all of this, he would gain knowledge. But amidst all that constant, intense fighting, Han Sen did not slip up once. His willpower was still perfectly focused. It was hard to imagine an earl could have such a hardy will. This guy must have experienced something before. How can his will compare to Lone Bamboo's? Is he the same as Lone Bamboo, in that he has a will that cannot break? Dream Beast seemed befuddled. Han Sen's willpower was getting weaker, however. Despite that, he wasn't going to get killed. Dream Beast knew how scary all of that must have been. He'd rather have his soul killed than give up. Not all beings had that kind of drive. For Dream Beast, Han Sen's will was shining like jewelry. Dream Beast sighed. His eyes took on a dreamy look, and then he removed the dream from Han Sen. He didn't want to get Han Sen killed. If things kept going, Han Sen's soul might have been exhausted. Then, he really would have died, and not just in the dream. Crash! Han Sen's body fell to the ground. His brain was buzzing, and it felt like it was ready to explode. That was the condition of one who was mentally exhausted. Dream Beast called for someone to return Han Sen to his island. He took the next few days to rest, and he slowly got better. When Han Sen recovered, his will was much clearer. His powers of sense were sharper. But the thing that made Han Sen the happiest was that he was now free. He knew that Dream Beast was only training him, but he still vastly preferred the feeling of freedom. While he was still sleeping, he let Bubble mimic him on the bed. Then, he slipped back to the Alliance. He held Linger and kissed her. Then, he held Ji Yanran. Han Sen thought it was the best thing ever. No one bothered Han Sen, and he spent the next month relaxing. He almost forgot he still had the 2 sky heart locks on him. The happy days flew by, and 2 months after returning to Dream Island, Thousand Feather Crane came to visit him. He had news to deliver. The ancient god Xenogeneic space? What is that place? Han Sen asked Thousand Feather Crane, stricken with confusion. He did not know why the leader of Sky Palace wanted to send him there. Thousand Feather Crane looked worried, and he said, Ancient God Xenogeneic space is a Xenogeneic space next to a barren system. We don't own it, but every time it opens, there is a spot available for us. I did not expect the leader to select you. Is there a benefit to going? Han Sen asked. Of course. While it is very big, it is also dangerous, I must note. Even the top earls or marquises might not make it out alive from such places, Thousand Feather Crane said. What are these benefits? Han Sen filtered out the dangerous part. He was afraid of danger, but if the leader wanted him to go there, there was no use worrying about it. The Xenogeneics in ancient god space are dangerous, but I do not know the specifics. I haven't been there before, but my master said it isn't just the Xenogeneics you should be wary of. There are also those of the other races who will enter when you do. Thousand Feather Crane explained what he knew. Han Sen was in a bad mood. He had been in ancient god for half a day, and he had already walked 30 miles. He was sweating. Under the protection of Yun Changkong, the 10th Elder, Han Sen arrived in the ancient god space. When he arrived, though, he realized that some power had entangled him. The power he felt was reminiscent of Sky Heart Lock. It was a little different, but the effects were similar. It hindered Han Sen's movement. Now Han Sen knew why the leader made him suffer the Sky Heart Locks. It was because he wanted him to experience what it was like to be hampered. The Sky Palace leader had planned to send Han Sen here a long time ago, that was clear. It was only a shame that the Sky Heart Locks had not been broken yet. If they had been, the ancient god space's restrictions wouldn't have been so arduous. The ancient god space was not as dangerous as he thought it would be, however. Aside from rocks everywhere, Han Sen walked all day without encountering a single Xenogeneic. Yun Changkong told Han Sen that his job there would be to hunt Xenogeneics. The Xenogeneics there were special, and their genes were fairly unique. The more he managed to retrieve, the better. But as of yet, he hadn't been able to find a single one. Without any to find, there weren't any to kill. Suddenly, Han Sen saw something move over a little rocky mountain. It was a being of some type, but upon closer inspection, the sight made Han Sen frown.
Han Sen.
The person saw Han Sen and screamed aloud. Then they approached Han Sen. Why do I see you everywhere? Han Sen said to Hire the pirate. He really hadn't wanted to see her again. Hire was an earl now. Her presence was much stronger than when he bumped into her with the Buddha. I should be the one asking you this. I thought burning lamp alpha turned you into an ant. How did you recover? Higher looked at Han Sen curiously. It was just a small trick. He didn't really do anything.
Han Sen smiled.
He was not in the mood to explain things to her. Higher smiled and said, well, since our fates repeatedly intertwine, why don't we cooperate once more? Together we can slay the ancient gods Xenogeneics.
No.
I prefer being alone. I am meant to be alone. Whoever follows me is subject to awful luck. Han Sen did not want her and her trouble to join him. Higher grinned and said, but this is fate. A clairvoyant told me. I connect well with loners, so that means we are meant to be together. We are partners, you know? It's okay if you want to follow, but I won't be sharing a single Xenogeneic with you. Han Sen shrugged his shoulders. Ah, so you weren't told. The Buddha sent someone to this place, too. What do you think might happen if he caught sight of you? Higher was not angry, and she kept talking as she followed behind Han Sen. I'm not afraid of burning lamp alpha, so why would I be afraid of a student? Even if I was scared, is cooperating with you supposed to make me less scared?
Han Sen sighed.
The Buddha sent a Marquise Buddha. He is not as strong as Seven Spirit, but he is an important person to them. However, that isn't the thing you need to know. The most important thing is that the Buddha are cooperating with Demon. The demons are enemies of Sky Palace, and they sent a person named Sharon. Do you have any idea how dangerous your situation is? Higher said. Who is Sharon? Han Sen kept on walking lackadaisically, as if he didn't care at all. You don't know who Sharon is? Higher asked Han Sen with shock. Do I have to know who he is? Han Sen lifted his lips. Higher finally believed that Han Sen really didn't know. You are Knife Queen student, and you do is? Have you heard of Lone Bamboo in Sky Palace?
Yeah, Han Sen sighed casually.
Good. Sharon's reputation with the demon is similar to Lone Bamboo's in Sky Palace. They are frequently mentioned together. He has already become a Marquise, so you are bound to know what will happen if you see him, Higher said. People talk about me in the same capacity as Lone Bamboo, too. That means I don't have to be afraid of that, Sharon.
Han Sen låg head.
What are you talking about? I know you. Seven Spirit almost killed you. Sharon is much better than Seven Spirit. Higher looked at him with disdain. Han Sen laughed and explained no more. Due to Sky Palace being quite private, news from the inside didn't often spread outside. Not many outsiders knew about him and Lone Bamboo. Even if I was afraid of Sharon, what use would bringing you along prove? Don't tell me you have battled him before, Han Sen said casually. I cannot beat him, but I know that there is a secret place in the ancient god space. I can take you there, where we can fight Xenogeneics and avoid encountering Sharon. Do you want to co-op or not? We split the Xenogeneics 50-50. I can help kill them too, Higher said. That doesn't sound too shabby. What kind of place is it anyway? Han Sen had walked for so long, and despite that, he hadn't seen a single Xenogeneic. He thought he wasn't going to fare too well. That place is mysterious. When the pirates of your came here, they stumbled upon it by pure happenstance. No one else should be able to find it without me guiding them there. Higher looked all cocky. If it is as good as you are leading me to believe, then I guess I can cooperate with you, Han Sen said. Of course. We will go right now. Higher said, and then kept on walking. After they met in Holy Heaven, she understood Han Sen a bit more. She knew Han Sen was the trustable sort, and as long as he would gain some sort of benefit, he wouldn't betray and kill her. Plus, Higher had a secret defense system. She wasn't afraid of Han Sen betraying her.
Han Sen then followed Higher.
There were many rocks around, but that was all. There was no place for the creatures to hide, so the chance of finding creatures there was virtually nil. Han Sen's body was restricted by the ancient god space's powers. Together, the pair walked dozens of miles. They ended up sweating so much, it looked as if they had just emerged from spring water. Here, this is it. Higher looked at her map and came to a stop near a crevice. Han Sen examined the crevice and noted how crooked it was. Only one person could go in at a time, slipping through sideways. There were many crevices such as this in the ancient god space, too. Higher went in first, and Han Sen followed her from behind. They both moved along the crevice for a few miles, until eventually, the space they occupied began to widen. Inside the mountains, there was a giant cave. Han Sen saw a statue made of stone just sitting there, but it was at least 100 meters tall. In front of the statue, Han Sen and Haier were as small as 2 ants. Han Sen could not tell which race this statue depicted. Its head was a sheep's, and its body was human-like. It also had wings. It looked like some prehistoric sheep god. Fortunately, there weren't any of such sheep around. Otherwise, he was going to call them grandfather. Why does this place have a statue? Do xenogeneics build statues? Han Sen asked with confusion. Thousand Feather Crane had told Han Sen some things about the ancient god space, but the young Sky hadn't actually been here. He couldn't have known what the xenogeneics were truly like. Haier said, "It is not a statue. It is a home for ancient god xenogeneics." A home? Han Sen was surprised, and so he looked at the statue again. Yes. Otherwise, why would they be called an ancient god xenogeneic? It is because these xenogeneics live in ancient statues. You came here and didn't know anything about this? Knife Queen didn't inform you? Haier asked, looking confused. Han Sen dropped his shoulders. He didn't know why the leader of Sky Palace would do this, either. Sending him here without giving him an ounce of information was weird. He couldn't discern what the man wanted. Haier wanted to say something more, but a ding-dong noise sounded through the giant cave. She quickly shut up and went to hide in a crevice. Han Sen looked towards the sound. The echo was reverberating around the room, but Han Sen's power could still tell him where it was coming from. It was coming from the nostrils of the statue. Not long after, a 3-meter-wide spider slid out of the nostril. The spider was black with a few red patterns flaring across it. Its body looked metallic, and the pattern on its back looked like a humanoid face. This is Ancient God's ghost face spider. It is an Earl xenogeneic. Do not strike yet, as they always work in groups. There must be far more of them inside the statue. A marquise one might even reside within. We should discuss our plan of action before we end up getting ourselves surrounded, Haier said. Han Sen looked at the ghost-faced spider with a thoughtful expression. He had fought these spiders in the dream he was put under. In fact, he had fought quite a lot of them. He knew a lot about the spider and the power it possessed. The dream had to be training for this. Why didn't he just tell me? Why did he try to scare me like that? Han Sen wondered. But Han Sen knew that if the Sky Palace leader had given him files on all the xenogeneics, he'd only have given it a brief look. He wouldn't have researched the foes properly. The dream, however, made Han Sen remember the creatures clearly. He knew everything about them, to a degree that would never lessen. The effectiveness of the two teaching methods was not even remotely comparable. Han Sen summoned spell as a gun in his hands. Then, he climbed into a gap and raised the gun. He took aim at the ghost spider emerging from the nostril. What are you doing? You are not going to shoot the ghost-faced spider from that distance, are you? The ghost-faced spider is very strong for an Earl. Haier gasped. Haier knew that Han Sen would have no problem killing a ghost-faced spider, but the range between them and the creature was over 3 kilometers. The Earl power would be weakened over a long distance, and the rest of the power wouldn't be enough to kill a ghost-faced spider. Pang! A gunshot rang out, and a bullet tore through the distance. It hit the spider's back. The part of the face pattern that comprised its left eye was its weak spot. Han Sen had killed too many of them in the dream he suffered, so he knew them all too well. Blood began to ooze from the gunshot wound in the creature's back. Then, it flipped and fell. It met the ground with a loud noise. Xenogeneic Earl killed. Ghost-faced spider. Xenogeneic gene found. The announcement sounded in Han Sen's head.
Haier was in Schock.
Han Sen's power was far stronger than the average Earl to one-hit kill the spider over such a long distance. After that shot, though, many more spiders began to emerge from the statue's nostrils and ears. There was a great host of them, but their vision and senses were rather limited, so they couldn't figure out where Han Sen was. Pang! Another gunshot rang out, and a bullet broke through another spider's back. He still took aim at the left eye's location. A hail of gunfire followed, as each spider was shot off of the statue. The spiders weren't very intelligent, and they only seemed to rely on basic instinct. They couldn't find Han Sen at all. Han Sen killed the spiders one at a time, taking down dozens in the space of a few seconds. Haier looked at Han Sen with shock, as her mind drifted out to space. Higher felt a chill in her heart. That gun-looking Geno armament of his had amazing range. She'd never know if Han Sen decided to use it to assassinate her. She was confident she could evade the attack if she was prepared, but she couldn't be on alert every hour of the day and night. Han Sen's power really was that scary, and he was only an earl. If he became a king or a deified being, he could probably kill a person by firing through the crust or core of a planet. The enemy would never even know how they died. Ghost-faced spiders kept climbing all around, and they kept firing out spider webs. They had no idea where Han Sen was, and they blindly fired their silk everywhere. It was obviously not effective on Han Senator, and the spiders continued to get picked off, as if they were mere target practice for him. After killing 100 of the Earl ghost-faced spiders, Han Sen finally heard the announcement to inform him that he had acquired a beast soul. Han Sen killed a few more, and then a weird scream sounded. It came from the mouth of the statue. A spider that was twice as big emerged. That is the Marquis's ghost-faced spider.
Higher screamed.
Han Sen did not say a word. He stopped firing. He waited until the giant ghost-faced spider revealed its back to them. And when it did, he pulled the trigger. Pang! A bullet struck the ghost-faced spider's back, and it broke the pattern's left eye. The Marquis-class ghost-faced spider fell down.
Higher looked at Han Sen in disbelief.
He had one hit killed a Marquis-class ghost-faced spider. She did not know what Han Sen's strength was anymore. It hasn't been that long, so how has he gotten this strong? Higher thought back to meeting Han Sen in the heaven. He was a different person, and he was so much stronger now. Higher thought she had leveled up quickly, but it was clear to her that Han Sen had been much faster. In total, 187 Earl and 2 Marquis ghost-faced spiders had been one-hit killed by Han Senator. None had been left alive, and none required a double tap to finish off. Han Sen's power was scary. Having practiced inside that dream was one of the reasons for this. If he hadn't endured that, he wouldn't have known the precise weaknesses of the ghost-faced spiders, and he wouldn't have been able to kill the Marquis spiders in one hit. But despite killing so many spiders, he had only earned a single beast soul for himself. It was a disappointment for Han Sen. Overall, Han Sen made sure there were no more spiders waiting to emerge from the statue, and then the pair crawled out of the crevice and started cutting up the bodies. The ancient god space's xenogeneics were different from the ones found elsewhere. The xenogeneic genes of the ghost-faced spiders were little balls. They looked like pearls. After Han Sen pulled one of the little orbs out, Higher looked hesitant. She hadn't actually done anything, so she didn't think she should take any of the spoils. She most certainly didn't think she should be going 50-50. But Han Sen went ahead and split the orbs in half. He placed half of them in his pockets and then climbed up the statue. Higher didn't hesitate to collect the rest of the orbs. Without Higher leading, Han Sen wouldn't have been able to find this cavern. There were too many crevices and gulches to traverse, and despite walking for a very long time, stumbling on this statue would have been very unlikely. So, Han Sen thought that the split of spoils was fair enough. Information was worth a lot. But there were many benefits yet to see, so their trip wasn't over yet. Inside the ancient god's xenogeneic cave, many goodies were waiting for them. Higher put away the orbs she had gathered and followed after Han Senator. She climbed up to the statue's shoulder. "Where should we go?" Han Sen asked, while observing the statue's head. With his knowledge of ghost-faced spiders, he knew that their creation was a strange process. If their origin wasn't destroyed, ghost-faced spiders would spawn continually. Normally, the statue's mouth is the closest to a beginning of ancient god. But the items are always contained within the statue, Higher explained. "What is a beginning of ancient god?" Han Sen asked. "You don't know?" Higher was surprised, but she knew Han Sen had no reason to lie to her. So, she went ahead to explain. A beginning of ancient god is what the xenogeneics are born from. Those are the most valuable things in the ancient god space. If you are able to get a beginning of ancient god, you can keep spawning ancient god xenogeneics forever. Those things are important to big factions. Surely you must know this. Han Sen nodded, and then he climbed into the mouth of the statue. Higher entered with him, and it was very large inside. There was a path that was only a few meters wide. It was very low, though, so they had to bend to traverse it. "If you don't know anything about this place, why did you decide to come?" Hire asked curiously as she walked. Han Sen did not answer. He hadn't known what a beginning of ancient god was. He had seen it in a dream, but he had never been told its name. Rather than telling him, Dream Beast had used the dream to inform him of the things he needed to know. It was easier than Han Sen thought it would be, though. Perhaps they had killed all of the ghost-faced spiders, because they didn't encounter any more along the way. They walked for 2 or 3 hours inside the statue, on a road that took them down many different routes. Eventually, they found a beginning of ancient god. It was a tablet about the size of a hand. It was gray, but it possessed a number of red lights. It also bore the pattern that adorned the ghost-faced spiders. Hire took it out from where it was embedded in a stone slot, and when she did, the pattern on the tablet went dim. Its red glow disappeared. There is only one of them. If you would like, you can have it first. Hire gave the beginning of ancient god, the one that pertained to the ghost-faced spiders, to Han Sen. I will take the next one. Han Sen did not accept the beginning of ancient god. In his dream, he recalled that the ghost-faced spiders were one of the weaker varieties. There were other xenogeneics with a beginning of ancient god that were far stronger than the ghost-faced spiders. After that, Han Sen turned around and started walking towards the exit. Their bodies were bound by the xenogeneic space, so they could not walk very fast, and neither could they fly out. When they emerged, they climbed down the statue and entered a cave nearby. You have given me this beginning of ancient god. Aren't you afraid that there might be no more to find later on? Hire said as she fiddled with the beginning of ancient god, smiling Han Sen from behind. It's okay. Accept it as a reward for the information you have provided me with, Han Sen said casually. I have really come to like you a bit more. If the rebate don't want you anymore, you can gladly come and live with us pirates. If you follow me, I can treat you with everything you could ever desire, Hire said. We can talk about that when the time comes, Han Sen said lackadaisically. He wasn't too interested. He had heard of the pirates before. They were a bunch of thieves, but the things they stole were massive. They weren't the sort to steal from ordinary creatures. They had stolen from many high races and earned many enemies across the Geno universe. Due to the pirates being so powerful, amongst other reasons, no one could do anything to stop them, either. Han Sen didn't want to be a thief. Even if Hire invited him sincerely, he wouldn't accept the offer. And on top of that, Hire always seemed to have an evil streak. Who knew what her true plans might have been? There was only one way to go after that statue, and after 8 miles of following it, they had yet to find a single other branch leading elsewhere. But they eventually heard the sound of water. It was similar to the noise of a big waterfall. They looked at each other and slowed down. They walked another 3 miles, and that was when the path widened again. There was indeed a waterfall. It looked like a galaxy in the deepest recess of the cave. The water sounds were very loud. Behind that waterfall was a silver statue. The waterfall came out from the statue's belly button. The statue's lower body was like that of a horse. The upper body was that of a human. It had the head of a bird, and it also possessed wings. It looked so strange. Did your elder tell you what xenogeneics this statue might harbor?
Han Sen asked Hire.
Hire shook her head. I don't know. When he came here, he was heavily injured. He didn't touch the statue from earlier, so he could not have come this far. I am just like you right now, clueless. As they were talking, a silver monster emerged from the water beneath the statue. It climbed up the waterfall and entered the belly button of the silver statue. The xenogeneic looked like it had been made entirely from silver. It sort of looked like a trilobite. It was, however, 1 meter long. When Han Sen saw the trilobite-looking silver xenogeneic, he frowned. In his dream, he had not encountered this xenogeneic. Is it an ancient god xenogeneic that Dream Beast was unaware of? Han Sen remained in thought, not yet ready to take action. He killed the ghost-faced spiders so confidently because he knew what they were. But facing something unknown was dodgy, and he wasn't sure he wanted to take the risk. Do you know of this xenogeneic?
Han Sen looked at Hire.
Hire just shook her head. You should fire a shot into the water. Perhaps there are other silver xenogeneics lurking within. Han Sen frowned. Without knowing what he was getting into, he didn't want to fire a bullet. Ghost-faced spiders weren't intelligent, so they were unable to discern where the bullets were fired from. It did not mean that the other Xenogeneics were the same, however. Attacking randomly, without caution, could put them in danger. They were bound by the powers that governed ancient god space. While that did not affect their strength, their speed was definitely lowered. Their reactions to danger would be much slower. They couldn't take unnecessary risks. After letting silence settle in for a bit, Han Sen moved his fingers. A red gas drifted out of his fingertips. A reaper appeared, clutching a red crystal scythe. It took off flying around the cave before heading for the pool of water near the waterfall. Higher looked at the red reaper with curiosity. She was used to Han Sen possessing all manners of tricks, but she was still interested in finding out what the reaper was capable of. When the reaper reached the water exploded. A trilobite-looking Xenogeneic suddenly emerged, leaping up to consume the red reaper. The red reaper's reaction was fast, however, and it struck the creature's silver shell. The reaper was a powerful little thing, but all it did was leave a minor mark across the shell. It certainly couldn't break through it. Pang, pang, pang. More silver Xenogeneics leapt out of the water. They were like cannonballs, shooting up towards the red reaper. The red reaper's scythe could not bear the brunt of such force, and one of the silver Xenogeneics was able to strike its body. Fortunately, the red reaper was made of smoke. After the silver Xenogeneic broke its misty form, it was able to quickly recompose itself. But the silver Xenogeneics weren't going to give up, and they repeatedly tried to attack the red reaper. When a Xenogeneic's jaws closed on the red reaper's scythe, the weapon was bitten off. Then, more and more silver Xenogeneics leapt up to bite the red scythe itself. Not long after, it had all been chomped and broken to pieces. The red crystal scythe was the strongest weapon that the red reaper had at its disposal. It was also its greatest weakness. Once it was broken, the red reaper would disappear. After the red reaper was destroyed, the silver Xenogeneics started swimming around in the water like a legion of crocodiles on the prowl for human flesh. They have some very strong bodies, and not to mention their physical power. These things must rank amongst the best of Earls out there. There are dozens of them, too. This will be tough to deal with, Han Sen said quietly. If he only had to deal with the silver Xenogeneics he had seen so far, he wouldn't be afraid. But if the Earl ones were that powerful, then the power of a potential Marquise one would be unimaginable. Han Sen rested for a bit, then recomposed the red reaper. He sent it out to the water again. The silver Xenogeneics weren't deep in the water yet, so the red reaper swooped down on one. And then, the silver Xenogeneic sunk. The other silver Xenogeneics started coming after the red reaper again. Han Sen turned his sniper rifle into a rocket launcher, then he mounted it on his shoulder and fired it at the red reaper. A group comprised of a dozen silver Xenogeneics latched onto the red reaper's scythe, breaking it immediately, just as the rocket came. Boom! A white mushroom light exploded from the midst of the silver Xenogeneic crowd. The strength blew each and every one of the Xenogeneics away. But those silver Xenogeneics' bodies glowed with a strange aura. They remained inside the fire, and the rocket's explosive power was unable to destroy their bodies. That is a powerful protection they possess. Not even spell can break through it.
Han Sen complimenterade them.
Why are you still standing there? Run, Higher said, before starting to run. The silver Xenogeneics were traveling towards them really quickly, scrambling over the stones. Their speed was frightening. Han Sen did not move, though. He stood firm with his rocket launcher, then fired another rocket at the silver Xenogeneics. This time, however, he had glazed the effects of turtle atop the rocket. Boom! A rocket exploded in the middle of the waves of silver Xenogeneics. They had an aura around them, shielding them from the explosion. It also protected them from turtle, preventing the symbol from sticking on them. It had been blocked. Buzz! Before Han Sen could attack again, a silver Xenogeneic flew out from that belly button. It looked like the first one they had seen in the water. This one had transparent silver wings, though. It was able to fly very fast. There were 4 or 5 of them flying out towards Han Sen. In total, they soon reached the front lines, soaring towards him. Han Sen did not fall back. He pulled out the blood feather knife and used his knife and sword power on the blade. Then, he slashed towards the silver-winged Xenogeneic nearest him. The knife and sword power hit the silver-winged Xenogeneic and activated its armor, but that scary knife and sword power was sufficient to break the auras and HEW the body of the silver-winged Xenogeneic in half. Mutant Xenogeneic Earl hunted. Silver-winged beetle, Xenogeneic gene found. Obtain mutant silver-winged beetle beast soul. Han Sen was happy, but he didn't have time to stop and look at his new beast soul. He was running towards the nearest silver beetle that was coming his way. He killed one of the silver beetles that could not fly. Those silver beetles weren't mutant. They were just ordinary Earl silver beetles. While Han Sen was having fun killing the beetles, something screamed near the silver statue. There was a silver, glass-like monster coming out. Its body was over 10 meters long. Its head possessed a silver beard, and there were 4 transparent wings on its back. It was already before Han Sen. A silver light came out of its mouth, moving much faster than knife lights and sword airs. Han Sen's body was hampered by both the sky heartlocks and the ancient god space itself. His speed was very slow, but fortunately, his rabbit shoes weren't affected. He could still move with the speed of a duke. The moment he dodged the silver light, a gold ant pattern appeared on Han Sen's body. It increased his power. He slashed towards the silver, glass-like bug.
Young.
The knife and sword powers came against the silver glass bug. A transparent silver light appeared. Han Sen's attack did not break the light at all. Han Sen was shocked. His body was like an ordinary marquise, and he had the Ant King Mark's buff. It shouldn't have been difficult for him to bring down a marquise, but his full-strength strike was unable to break the silver glass bug's armor. It was a scary thing to comprehend. Han Sen used the rabbit shoes and their speed to fight with the silver glass bug. He kept striking its shielding aura, but nothing seemed to work. The aura was far too tough, and not even his knife and sword powers could break through it. Han Sen was at a very bad disadvantage. Han Sen's speed was aided by the rabbit shoes, but Sky Heartlock and Ancient God's hampering were still in play. Under the pressure of this tough of a fight, he was starting to feel tired. His body was sore, and he felt awful. This cannot continue. Han Sen wanted to leave, and as he made the decision, he noticed Higher was already long gone. The silver glass bug was not slow at all. It kept chasing after Han Sen, spitting out silver light. Han Sen clenched his jaw and ran towards the waterfall cave. That was the only way to go back, and there was no place he could hide. He would rather take his chances in a wider space. The silver glass bug was flying, and so Han Sen flew like a phoenix to swoop around and strike its back while airborne. But the knife and sword power still couldn't break the silver armor. This was the first time Han Sen had encountered a Xenogeneic with extremely high defense. Han Sen believed it had to be a mutant marquis Xenogeneic that was simply aligned with defensive attributes. Han Sen continued to fight, retreating all the while. He ran into the belly button of the silver statue. If he was going to run off, he was not going to run off empty-handed. He wanted to find the statue's beginning of Ancient God. He could not kill the bug, but he still thought that the beginning of Ancient God might be up for grabs. Luckily, the statue had many different paths to take. So, Han Sen used the unique geography to kite the silver glass bug around. It made things better, but it also cost Han Sen a lot of power. He was getting slower and slower as time went by. Since there were no other people around, Han Sen summoned his Dongxian armor. The Dongxian armor started absorbing the energy in the atmosphere to keep Han Sen fueled up. That way, he could keep on fighting and not wind up failing due to exhaustion. It looked like the Xenogeneic silver beetles he had encountered earlier were all there were. After he killed the ones on the outside, there were no more to be discovered on the inside of the cave. Han Sen kept heading down the same tunnel, and 2 hours later, he found the beginning of Ancient God embedded in a wall. It was a silver metal slab with an irregular, haphazard shape. There was a trilobite symbol on it, though, flashing with a silver light. Han Sen was pleased to have found it, and he ran over to it and pried it free. The silver glass bug was furious, and its desire to kill Han Sen was even greater now. A bug and a human were fighting inside that cave. Han Sen could not break its armor, and he was hit by the silver light a few times. The Dongxian armor was also slashed open in a place or two. Han Sen planned to wait until the silver glass bug had exhausted all its power. Perhaps by then, its aura would weaken too. But after fighting for 10 hours, Han Sen felt ready to fall apart. The aura of the silver glass bug, however, was still the same. It was too late for Han Sen's body to dodge the next strike. The silver glass bug's silver light pierced through him. Han Sen's body exploded like a water balloon. It was just a clone he had generated with Moon, though. And while the bug was distracted with the moon, Han Sen took off running down a smaller passage. He used the Dongxian Sutra to hide his presence, and then he stopped moving. The silver glass bug was flying angrily around the cave, making horrible screeching sounds. After a while, the silver glass bug flew away from the cave. When it did, Han Sen emerged and started making his way back out from the way he had come. The silver glass bug was too strong, especially its silver armor. Unless he used Super Spank, he didn't think he could break it. Super Spank's power might have broken the armor, but it also might destroy the body completely. That would rob him of potential gains. If he wouldn't receive any benefits, Han Sen wasn't going to bother. Han Sen came out of the crevice, and he found Higher standing just outside. Han Sen switched to his spell armor. "You run fast." Han Sen looked at Higher and smiled. Higher smiled and said, "I am just a pirate. I am not good at anything else. I run fast to secure survival. I had faith in you, though. I knew you would come back alive." Han Sen sat on the floor. He was really tired. The weight of the sky heart locks and ancient god space's force had hindered him quite a bit, and he was 10 times more tired than he should have been. He had almost exhausted his entire reserve of energy just to make it out. "Where do we go next?"
Higher asked Han Sen, sitting opposite him.
"I think our cooperation ends here. After this, we will go our separate ways and have no further engagement," Han Sen said. "You are too cruel. We have defied death together. Hang on, you just left me to die." "Don't try to butter it up," Han Sen exclaimed, stopping her. Higher rolled her eyes and said, "How about I hire you to hunt xenogeneics, then?" "I am not interested." Han Sen lay down on the floor and closed his eyes. Sweat was dripping from him, and his muscles were all sore. "Someone is here," Higher said suddenly. Han Sen sat up, and he looked in the direction that Higher was indicating. A few people were coming, but their faces could not be seen clearly. A bald head in their midst did stand out, however. "Buddha!" Han Sen was shocked. "Run. I will see you again." Higher turned around and ran, forgetting all about her pleas for cooperation. She really is good at running. He felt poorly. He wanted to leave as well, but he was far too tired. He would rather preserve his energy for a fight than run off. The group saw Han Sen and approached him. One of them was a Buddha, and one of them had purple horns. He was a demon. The others were comprised of different races. In total, there were 6 of them. "Amitabha, Mr. Han, I cannot believe we have met here once again." The Buddha, seeing Han Sen, looked murderous. "I didn't expect to see you guys here either." Han Sen sat where he was, not moving. He wanted to rest some more. "You are Han Sen?" The man of the demon looked at Han Sen with interest. Han Sen looked back at the man, guessing he was the Sharon that Higher had told him so much about. Unlike Lone Bamboo, Sharon was a born genius. He was far better than those of the same level, and he had apparently never failed at anything. He had learned all of his Geno arts quickly, and he had also been known to improve techniques and skills. That was why he was so good. Sharon was a rare person who possessed 2 Geno arts. He had studied the demon's Sky Demon Sutra and another mysterious Geno art. He had been buffed twice, so he really was quite strong. According to Higher, he made a gamble with every opponent that was of the same level. He had never lost once. He was expected to become deified one day. "Not bad. I am Han Senator. Who are you?" Han Sen asked, looking at Sharon. He didn't care if it was Sharon or not. He just wanted to keep up the small talk so he could rest. "I am Sharon of the Demon," Sharon answered. The Buddha next to Han Sen then said, "Mr. Han, it looks like you've just been through a big fight. Is there an ancient god statue nearby?" "So what if there is?" Han Sen answered, "Did you get the beginning of ancient god?" The people's eyes went bright as they kept checking Han Sen out. "If I got it, would I still be here?" Han Sen lifted his lips and gave the Buddha a disdainful look. "I see. Then let's go for a walk." The the Buddha said to Han Sen. Why would I lead you? Han Sen asked icily. That is not up to you to decide, shouted a member of their party. It had 6 legs, and its steel-like hands reached out to grab Han Sen. Green smoke rose from its hand and formed into a big claw. It was going to sink the claw into Han Sen's body. Han Sen did not move, though. He waited until the green claw had almost reached him, and then he pulled out blood feather knife and swung it at the green claw. The 6-legged person shot the knife a dismissive glance. He was a marquis, so he didn't take the Earl-class Han Sen seriously. He was still going to press forward with his attack with the green claw. Catcha! The power put into the blood feather knife was sufficient to lop the green claw off. And it didn't end there. The knife went forward to strike the 6-legged creature directly. The 6-legged creature did not expect an Earl to be that powerful. It was too late for him to try to dodge the strike now. And then, his body was cut through at the waist. It went all the way, lopping him in 2. It didn't immediately kill him, though, and he kept screaming from the ground until the teeth powers finished him off. Everyone was shocked. No one underestimated Han Sen now, and they all looked at him with caution. But they didn't fall back. Instead, the rest spread out to encircle Han Sen. Teeth knife is strong, Sharon complimented. Killing a Yahoo like that is nothing, Han Sen said expressionlessly. Mr. Sharon, there is no use in talking with him. Let's take him down, the Buddha said. Sharon did not move, however. He smiled and said, I have heard Han Sen killed 7 spirit while in your heaven. Infinite Buddha, you should not get involved. He is such a horrible person. We should kill him without a second thought, Infinite Buddha said. It is still wrong to pawn off your work on others. Perhaps you should end this yourself. What do you guys think? Han Sen looked at the other creatures. Yeah. A few of them nodded. Infinite Buddha's face changed, but only for a second. And then, he said the Buddha catchphrase. Ba. Then I will do it. After that, Infinite Buddha threw a slap towards Han Senator. A bunch of stars came out of his hand, flying towards Han Sen like a renegade solar system. Han Sen used his blood feather knife still, and he used Tusk to fight the incoming stars. But when the knife air hit the stars, it was like it actually entered space and disappeared into the void. Nothing was able to hurt the stars. Han Sen was shocked. Infinite Buddha was not as famous as 7 Spirit, but his skills were good. He shouldn't have underestimated the power of those stars that possessed space energy. The stars landed on Han Sen, and he still hadn't moved. He used blood feather knife to draw a circle. The star power was sucked into it. And then, Han Sen flipped over his hands. The circle drawn by the knife expelled the stars, launching them back towards Infinite Buddha. That was his reversing technique. Infinite Buddha's face changed. He shouted and summoned a lotus beneath his feet. He dodged the knife circle with stars, while throwing more stars back at Han Sen. Han Sen sat on a rock and drew some knife circles with his knife. He used Infinite Buddha's attacks to fight back. Infinite Buddha used a whole host of Geno arts, but nothing he did seemed able to break Han Sen's knife circle. He could not even make Han Sen move from the spot. What a powerful teeth knife. No wonder it is a cherished technique of the rebate. Fighting the Marquis Infinite Buddha as an Earl? That is scary, said one of the creatures that was preventing Han Sen from escaping. It couldn't help but compliment his finesse. Sharon shook his head and said, Teeth knife is not scary. It is Han Sen who is. Yeah, teeth knife is strong. Amongst the rebate, only Knife Queen can practice teeth knife to the same level. Han Sen is an outsider to them, and yet he learned a rebate exclusive skill to that proficiency. That makes him a scary guy, said a woman with dragon horns and black wings. Infinite Buddha realized that he was unable to kill Han Sen, despite Han Sen's obvious exhaustion. He looked enraged. His body started to glow, then transform into gold. It was not like 7 Spirits' 4-faced, 8-armed Buddha gold body. He was like an angry King Kong, with stars all around him. This Infinite Buddha is a xenogeneic. It seems that there are many xenogeneics amongst the Buddha. Han Sen stared at Infinite Buddha, but he didn't move. Infinite Buddha looked like an angry King Kong. He put his hands together, and then, lots of stars began to fly together and form one large cluster. As the power built, the stars became brighter and brighter. Still, Their sizes remained the same, and by the end, the stars looked like miniature suns. They looked very scary. The Buddha's infinite galaxy Geno art is powerful, but it takes too long to generate. Using it to attack Han Sen, who is not being offensive, is a good idea, Sharon said, with a laugh. The dragon lady also laughed, and she said, "This time, Han Sen will have to move. No matter how powerful his empty white teeth is, there's still a limit. With Han Sen's power, he won't be able to return Infinite Galaxy's power." Yup, Infinite Buddha has not struck yet, and he is still generating power. Infinite Galaxy will only keep getting stronger. Han Sen definitely won't be able to return it, and trying to would only lead to his body being destroyed, said another person. Infinite Buddha's face was dark with rage. His countenance was scary to see. The power in his hands continued getting stronger, as if there was no end to its power. Han Sen did not strike, and the Buddha wasn't ready to unleash yet. He was going to generate enough of the Infinite Galaxy's power to secure a one-hit kill on Han Sen. He didn't care about the ways that Han Sen could be useful to them. Killing Han Sen to maintain his pride was far more crucial to him than letting Han Sen lead them somewhere. If he missed this opportunity, he wouldn't have another. Infinite Galaxy was getting stronger.
Han Sen loked grim.
He held his blood feather knife and stared at the light in his opponent's hands. But still, he did not move. He is still not moving. He really wants to face the wrath of Infinite Buddha's Infinite Galaxy, the dragon lady said with surprise. "I am afraid he thinks he is able to," Sharon laughed. Infinite Buddha's hands were too bright for him to close now. He was on the brink of losing control. Infinite Buddha shouted and pushed his hands towards Han Senator. The light became a destructive wave that hurtled towards Han Sen. Han Sen stared at the light, which looked like a compressed galaxy. It contained an unbelievable amount of power. Not even a top marquise could face off against it. Han Sen waved his blood feather knife and created another circle. It was empty white teeth. "You cannot return the power possessed by Infinite Galaxy." Infinite Buddha roared. It looked like Han Sen's behavior thus far had humiliated him. As Infinite Buddha roared, the light approached the knife circle. It looked like a solar system bearing down on an ant. It looked ready to explode. The knife circle was quivering, looking likely to break. "Let me give you some advice. Never use something you cannot control," Han Sen said quietly. Then, the power in his body was unleashed. The power inside the knife circle was thrown back towards Infinite Buddha. "Impossible!" Infinite Buddha was shocked. Facing that power, he did not attempt to block it. Instead, he tried to run away. Boom! The power slammed into a boulder sitting on the ground. The shockwave was like a planet exploding. It destroyed everything within a few 100-meter radius. Infinite Buddha was unable to evade that explosion, and half of his body was hurt badly. He was brought down to the ground, bleeding profusely. "Mr. Sharon, are you not going to attack?" Infinite Buddha wanted to stop his wounds from bleeding, but the purple knife air was spreading. It was ravaging his wounds. Sharon looked at Infinite Buddha and said, "I would strike, but in a capacity that has nothing to do with your own petty grievance against Han Sr. As long as you strike, the reason does not matter." Infinite Buddha screamed, looking frightened. "It is a shame you are so badly hurt. And with the addition of teeth powers, I am afraid I cannot save your life," Sharon said, looking calmly upon him. "That is fine."
Just kill Han Sen.
Infinite Buddha said, while coughing up blood. His body could no longer keep the teeth power down. In a few seconds, he was torn to shreds as if in the maw of a beast. Blood poured out of him as he died. Xenogeneic Marquise hunted. Star King Kong. Xenogeneic gene found. An announcement played in Han Sen's head, but he knew he couldn't just go and take Infinite Buddha's xenogeneic genes. A creature that looked like a white tiger moved over and swiftly swallowed the corpse. The xenogeneic genes went with it. And then, the creature stared at Han Sen. Sharon looked at Han Sen with curiosity. "I did not believe that you dueled and came to a draw with Lone Bamboo, but now I most certainly do." "He tied with Lone Bamboo?" one of the other xenogeneics asked in shock. News in Sky Palace was buttoned down, but the demons were not friendly with Sky Palace. So, they gleaned as much information as they could about things there. Sharon was the only one who knew about Han Sen and Lone Bamboo. Sharon laughed and said, during that exam, Lone Bamboo leveled up to being a marquise. He was disqualified from the Earl exam, so there was no winner. If this man can fight Lone Bamboo in such a way, then he is not someone so simple. The dragon lady looked at Han Sen, now showing a greater interest in him. Sharon looked at Han Sr. It is a shame you are not a marquise. Otherwise, I would very much like to fight you. Even if I gave you time to heal, I'd still beat you. I don't want to have to kill you right now, so you'd best lead the way.
Han Sen smiled.
I don't have a good temper. It might be easy for you to kill me, but even so, you won't get me to lead. Sharon frowned. The dragon lady laughed and said, then I shall make a bet with you. If you beat me, we will let you go. And if you lose, then you lead. Who are you? Han Sen asked, looking at the dragon lady. Dragon 13 of the dragon, the dragon lady said in a friendly manner. Dragon 13? Nice name, but this test is not fair, Han Sen said, trying to buy himself some time. Dragon 13 knew what Han Sen was doing, but she didn't call him out on it. She simply smiled and asked, what is unfair? If I lose, I have to lead you guys somewhere that I might die. And if I win, I only get to live. That is what's not fair, Han Sen said with an innocent expression. Dragon 13 was not mad, and so she asked him kindly, that is not fair? Then what would you suggest is fair? If I win, for my remaining time in ancient god space, how about you be my bodyguard? Han Sen suggested, raising an eyebrow at Dragon 13. Dragon 13 laughed and said, that's a good idea. I will be at a disadvantage, but that is okay. I agree to these terms of yours. Then that is the deal, Han Sen said seriously. Yes. Dragon 13 brought out a black, screw-shaped lance in her hands. The moment she grabbed the lance, Han Sen felt spooked. She gave him a strange feeling, and Han Sen could not feel her inside his Dongxian aura, so he was unable to determine her true strength. Dragon 13 held the screw lance, but she did not strike. She sounded confident when she said, I am not infinite Buddha. If you wish to use empty white teeth to return my attacks, think again. Then what am I supposed to do?
Han Sen låg head.
Han Sen just wanted to buy himself some time, so he could rest a little bit more. He did not actually expect Dragon 13 to reply. The evil breaker lance of the dragon can break any skill thrown against it. Your returning skill might work on other races, but it won't work on me. If you seek victory, use your own strength. I hope you do, Dragon 13 said calmly. Breaking all skills, you say? That is a bold claim to make, Han Sen said. Dragon 13 simply shrugged. If you do not believe me, use your empty white teeth and see if you are able to return my attack. After that, Dragon 13 attacked Han Senator. The lance became a line that was sharper than a needle. Han Sen did not make an attempt. Power that had been concentrated like that was not something he could have returned, even if she had not used a skill. Han Sen's rabbit shoes unleashed a burst of speed as he dodged Dragon 13's lance. His blood feather knife was aimed for her neck. Dragon 13 squinted. Han Sen was just an earl that was under the ancient god space's hampering, and yet, he could be that quick. She was surprised. She was only a little surprised, though. Dragon 13 spun her lance, and the lance temporarily disappeared. When it showed up again, the tip was going to come into contact with Han Sen's throat. Han Sen frowned and jumped to the sky. He dodged Dragon 13's lance and used his blood feather knife. They kept swooping and flashing between the rocks. No one could accurately trace their movements. They fought for a whole minute, going by each other many times. The knife and lance did not touch each other. What is this knife skill? Teeth knife should not look like this. The White Tiger Marquise was in shock. That is not teeth knife. That is sky palaces under the sky. Sharon's eyes looked sharp. Under the sky? I have never heard of that before, the White Tiger Marquise said doubtfully. Sharon looked at Han Sen and said, Under the Sky was created a long time ago by a Sky Palace elder. Due to there being many flaws with it, they forbid the students from ever learning it. It seems to me as if that flaw has been fixed, but who might have done that, I do not know. What is so special about this knife skill? White Tiger Marquise asked. I do not know. I only know this knife skill is modified and derived from the textless book. Due to no one using this skill before, no one really knows how strong it might be. But people who haven't learned the textless book should not be able to learn it. It is surprising Han Sen has learned Under the Sky, especially as he is an outsider. Sharon said. Han Sen used the speed of the rabbit shoes to fight Dragon 13. Han Sen did not know if Evil Breaker Lance had the power to break skills, but he knew that he didn't have that kind of strength himself. If he became a Marquise, he wagered he could give it a try. Dragon 13 was not as complex as Lone Bamboo. She maintained simple lance techniques and a simple focus on power. There wasn't much variety, but even so, the simplicity of the strikes was still very violent. She could use her power to drive them to the max. If Han Sen did not have the aid of the rabbit shoe's speed, and Dragon 13 was not mellowed by the force of the ancient god space's power, then Han Sen would have already been hit. Dragon 13 is powerful. She is a shining example of pure bravery. Her lance conquers everything. Those of the same level must avoid her carefully. I am not a Marquise and I am weaker, Han Sen thought to himself. Frighteningly, Dragon 13 was becoming bolder for some reason. Her speed and power were increasing too. The rabbit shoes started to fail in keeping up with her speed. Han Sen was naive to think he could fight Dragon 13. She is the bravest of the dragons for sure. No one at the same level can fight her. And furthermore, dragons get stronger the longer they fight. The longer the fight lasts, the worse off Han Sen will end up, the White Tiger Marquise said. Sharon frowned and did not speak. He thought something was wrong, but he couldn't quite tell what it was. Han Sen suddenly retreated to gain some distance. Dragon 13, clutching her lance, tried to catch up with him, but her armor started cracking as if it was being hit by something. It kept getting cut. Dragon 13 stopped. She looked around and coldly said, "When did you leave this knife air around us?" "My first strike came while I was airborne. All this time, I have generated countless knife airs. You can't see them, but if you keep hitting them, you know what will eventually happen, yes?"
Han Sen smiled.
Combining Under the Sky strikes with Moon's gentility, Han Sen had set up lots of knives in the air. They were like a mesh of puppet wires all around Dragon 13. They hung in the air, strands of invisible knife silk. A powerful skill. A very powerful skill, Dragon 13 complimented. She looked around, unable to determine where those knife airs were hiding. That is too much of a compliment.
Han Sen smiled.
Dragon 13 continued on to say, "Don't be so happy too soon. Do you know why the dragon are called the bravest?" "I don't know." Han Sen had never heard this before. "You will find out soon enough," Dragon 13 said, and then she spun her black lance. The lance became even sharper, until it turned into a light that fired towards Han Sen. Countless strands of knife silk cut into her armor. Cracks appeared all over her armor, but no blood seeped out. Han Sen could see that after the knife silk cut through the armor, her skin still looked crystal white. There was no evidence of a single wound. Han Sen was shocked by this. He gathered up more knife silks. They could break a Marquise class armor, but they could not break Dragon 13's skin. She had a very strong body. Dragon 13 was like a warrior that was walking boldly over landmines. The landmines kept exploding, but they didn't hurt her body. She approached, completely unstoppable. Her lance mind was sharp. Dragon 13 came right before Han Sen, with a speed and power that had increased even more. Han Sen was quite exhausted by this point, and he couldn't evade her attack. Pang! Han Sen's forehead was pierced through, and his body exploded. Dragon 13 only realized then that she had destroyed a simple clone generated by Moon. Han Sen was already distancing himself. Her face did not change, though. Her lance became a line that attacked Han Sen again. That attack looked unstoppable, and it was born of bravery. Not even Han Sen knew what to do against that. So, Han Sen used his movement to dodge. But Dragon 13's lance was getting faster. And due to Han Sen being bound to the forces of the space, it was even more difficult to dodge. If they had both been Marquises, Han Sen would not have been so afraid of her. But there was a whole tier separating them. There was a grand gulf of strength between them, as she was undoubtedly one of the top Marquises. Pang! Han Sen got hit, and he was sent shooting through the sky like a star. He thudded into a stone wall and broke it.
Han Sen, concede now.
If I hit you 3 inches higher, you'd have been a dead man, Dragon 13 said grimly, coming over to the broken wall. But no answer was received. She frowned. Her face changed. Oh no, the mountain has a crevice. He accepted my hit so he could escape through it. What an annoying man. Even in a situation such as this, he had an ulterior scheme. Sharon shook his head. Why are you still talking? Go catch him, and do not let him run off. The Marquis's white tiger roared, shattering the rocks around them. The crevice was revealed more clearly, and the white tiger sprinted when inside. Dragon 13 and Sharon went in, too. They were going to catch up with Han Sen, somewhere in the gully. Han Sen traveled through the tunnel quickly. His chest had a hole in it, but he was not bleeding. However, some evil power had entered his wound, and it was permeating his entire body. Dragon power is too strong. It is not like teeth power that could go on forever, but it is far too concentrated. It is difficult to push it out of my body, and I can't stop and take the time to get rid of it. Han Sen, clutching his wound, continued fleeing through the cave. The cave had many alternate routes. Han Sen had to find a place in which he could hide and get rid of the powers inflicted by the lance. Fortunately, his blood and bones were different than those of an ordinary being. If they hadn't been, the lance's power would have destroyed him. He ran through the caverns for a long time. He felt Dragon 13 coming, though, and this confused him. With the Dongxian aura hiding him, she shouldn't have been able to find him. Is it the lance power inside me? Han Sen thought, realizing the problem. If that power was still inside him, Dragon 13 would be able to track him down. But he currently did not have the time to get rid of it. If it was just Dragon 13 alone, Han Sen would have been willing to give it a shot. But Sharon and the others were Marquises. It'd be difficult for Han Sen to take them all. Han Sen gritted his teeth, and he ran to the silver ancient god statue. If he couldn't shake his pursuers, he thought he might have better luck by employing the silver glass bug. Han Sen knew how to get there, and he eventually found his way to the ghost-faced spider statue. Then, he went behind it and down and through another cave. Not long after, Dragon 13, with Sharon and the others, arrived at the ghost-faced spider cave. They saw the sheep-headed ancient god statue. There is an ancient god statue, but it looks like someone has already claimed it, Sharon said, while looking at the ancient god statue. Han Sen ran into the ancient god statue. The beginning of ancient god should be on him. If we had known this sooner, we could have just gone and killed him. There'd have been no need for all this trouble. The White Tiger Marquis wanted to try. He headed toward the statue. Dragon 13 looked at the cave behind the statue and coldly said, Han Sen is not inside the statue. He went behind. Then keep up the chase. The beginning of ancient god is on him, Sharon said. It is lucky that you left the lance power on him. Otherwise, we'd have been thoroughly fooled. And if we had taken the time to search the statue, he'd have been long gone, the White Tiger Marquis said happily. Dragon 13 brought them to the cave behind the statue and continued chasing Han Sen. Han Sen kept running, but he was unable to find the strange silver bug. He came to that same waterfall as before, but still, he could not find it. Before he could think of what to do next, he felt Dragon 13 drawing near. He gritted his teeth and fled into the statue. The entrance was in the statue's belly button. Han Sen had only been in there for a minute when Dragon 13 reached the statue. Hey, there is another ancient god statue, but this one looks different. Is Han Sen here? The White Tiger Marquis was looking at the silver ancient god statue. He is inside the statue, Dragon 13 said confidently. How about this? 13 and I chase him down, while you guys wait out here in case he runs back out. Sharon spoke to White Tiger Marquis and the others. The White Tiger Marquis nodded. Sharon and Dragon 13 entered the waterfall and chased after Han Sen. Han Sen was starting to feel pain radiating throughout his body. The lance power was like a snake, slithering inside him. If he didn't flush it out soon, his organs would start to break.